All right, good evening, everybody. It is Stefan Molyneux from Free Domain. Hello, welcome to Wednesday Night Live, 17th of September, 2025. 8 days a week and 8 days until my birthday. Yes, a slightly more mature man would not be crowing over it, but having survived a deadly disease every single day is glorious. So I appreciate that, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And what am I getting messages here? Yes, we are all good everywhere, all the time, no matter what. So that is good to know. That is good to know. All right, let me just try one thing over here. And I believe that you can... we'll get to that. We will get to that. All right. Let's get to you. I've got stuff to talk about, but let's get straight to you because you are le brains of the outfit. 20th, yeah. October 24th is the 20th anniversary of my first article that was published. All right. We'll get to that. Chorter.
Yes, brother. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Hey, I kind of pestered you in the comments and on locals a little bit, but I've asked a few questions over the years because I do appreciate your mind, and I feel like I've been asking the wrong questions. I've been talking about more general philosophy topics and things that have been bothering me, but I feel like it's not maybe the right thing to be asking on the show. So maybe you can help me ask the right questions. What should we be asking as fans of Stefan Molyneux on this show?
Well, I think that the most fundamental question is, how do I spread philosophy? I mean, if you have a Midas magic touch to cure people of anti-rationality, of unhappiness, of the inability to love and be loved, to have self-respect, to do good and virtue in the world, if you have that amazing ability, then how do you spread it? Because if you can't spread philosophy, man, we lose. I mean, we're losing pretty hard as it is, as we could see from last Wednesday, but I think that the real question is, how do you spread philosophy? Is that something that might cook in your brain a bit?
Yes, and I feel like you favor topics that are more personal, of course. In people's personal lives, and I appreciate that. I'm happy to talk about stuff.
Hang on. What do you mean I favor? Tell me what you mean.
Yeah, what I mean is, the questions that I've personally asked have been more general, brain in the vat type stuff. I asked you just a few weeks ago about the robots and the AI, artificial wombs, that type of stuff.
Okay, and have I rejected those questions?
No, you've actually been very good.
Okay,
I
hang
appreciate.
on. So this is an example of philosophy would be this, and I'm sorry to be a nag. It's totally fine what you're asking. I'm just sort of pointing something out. So I've written, 12 or 13 books. How many of them have been on personal relationships?
Ooh, I guess not. None.
One. I've won one book called Real-Time Relationships, The Logic of Love. The other 12 or 13 or 14 or whatever it is are not. Now, you could say Peaceful Parenting is about personal relationships, but not sort of love, adult personal relationships. So if I don't reject topics that are not personal relationship topics or self-knowledge topics, if I don't reject those and I accept those and I've accepted yours, and I don't say, well, no, you can't talk about robots or brain in a vat topics because I only want to talk about, sort of personal history or self-knowledge topics. I'm just trying to understand, and it's not a criticism, I'm genuinely curious. When you say I prefer or I gravitate towards those topics, I'm not sure what you mean. I answer the topics that people bring up. The call-in shows are not for personal life issues. The call-in shows are anything people want to talk about. And that's just what people want to talk about. So if that's what people want to talk about, for the most part, am I pursuing the topic or am I satisfying audience demand?
You may be satisfying the audience demand. I appreciate that, and I can accept that.
And sorry, this is
Um,
just a philosophical thing, which is you have an observation, which is fine. You have an observation that, Steph, you do a lot of self-knowledge, personal relationship, personal philosophy calls, and I think you think that that's what I prefer. Now, you wouldn't know this if you haven't listened to a lot of shows, but everybody knows my favorite topic is UPB, and I love abstract philosophy, and I love debating epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Those are my favorite topics. But you go to where the audience is, and what people like in terms of sending in questions, and what people like in terms of the shows are the sort of personal topic call-in shows. So that's what people want to talk about, and that's what the audience likes, and I accommodate the audience. So it's interesting. Have you ever run a business?
yes, I have.
Okay, so you know that you can only have a certain amount of sway with your audience, right? I mean, you do have to follow the audience where they are. You have to follow the paying customers or the level of interest in your customers where they are, right? And so it's interesting that you would make, I think it's an error, and it's a completely understandable error. And again, I'm not trying to be some big nag here, but that you would say, well, Steph, you seem to gravitate towards these topics as if it's sort of my choice. And that's just an epistemology error in a way, or a not understanding how a business works era, which is rather than saying, well, this is the topics that Steph wants to, and I say this to you not because it's important for my show or whatever it is, but it's just a little bit of critical thinking, which is to say, why does Steph do these kinds of shows? Why does Steph do call-in shows or have topics that are sort of personal philosophy stuff? Is that Steph driven, or is that audience driven? Because if you've been an entrepreneur, you know you don't actually have a lot of control over your customer base, right? You kind of have to follow where they go and where they want, if that makes sense.
100%. I totally agree, and I get where you're coming from.
All right.
100%.
So how can I help you?
Well, well, I just I guess this is an audience request to maybe cover some of these more general philosophical topics, like brain in the vat, for example, and just more general topics that don't necessarily relate to the audience's. Well, when I say don't relate to the audience, that could be a red flag for an entrepreneur like yourself. But you get what I'm saying. More general topics, you know.
Well, but when I've been doing a whole bunch of shows recently, I think I'm on 7, and they're half an hour to an hour each. So it's 5 to 6 hours of responding to questions from X and other places where people are generally asking me philosophical questions in the abstract. The calls that I do on X, like these kinds of live streams, it generally tends to be philosophical topics, abstract topics, sometimes political topics. So are you saying that I should do more solo, individual, unprompted philosophical topics?
Yeah, perhaps. And really, the start of my whole question was, how do I ask the right questions to to bring these topics uh, to light?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. And this, again, doesn't have anything to do with me in particular, or even you in particular, but it's a big question, which is, how do I get what I want in life? If you want me to do more abstract philosophy, which is fine, and I respect that as a preference and a request, how do you get me to do more abstract philosophy? It's a big question, right? So what would your ideas be about how to get me to do more abstract philosophy?
Well, shoot, I guess. Well, asking more questions, I guess, about abstract philosophy would be a start. That's for sure.
Well, but that's very limited, right? So, and the reason that's limited is you can ask me a philosophical question or two, once every week or 2 or 3 or whatever it is, right? It's sort of as a cycle back to you in the queue, but that's not going to get you what you want. So the question is, and this is a big question which we all have to face in life, how do we get other people to do what we want? You want me to do more abstract philosophy. How do you achieve that goal? Or what's the best approach that you could take to achieve that goal?
Perhaps spark others to ask these questions.
I think that's possible for sure. And that would give me signals to maybe switch topics to more abstract philosophical topics. But the problem is that's kind of limited. right? Because there only is probably a certain number of people that you know who genuinely want to ask these questions and wouldn't be doing it just because you've handed them a piece of paper or something like that. So what
It'd be
else could
one
you
at
do?
best.
I'm sorry?
It would be one at best.
Okay, so you get one other person. So what else what else could you do?
Shoot, well, I don't know. That's what I'm asking, my friend.
Well, sell me. Sell me. If
Okay.
you want me to do more philosophical questions, either it's for your benefit or it's for the benefit of the philosophical conversation as a whole. Now, if it's just for your benefit, book a call-in show. freedomain.com/call, right? You can pay for one if you want one private. You can have a free one if you want one public. So you can do that, right? And then you get your philosophical content, right?
Right.
Number
Love it.
two, that's number one. Number two, sell me. How does it benefit me, my show, and philosophy as a whole for me to do these topics? And you have to figure out how it's beneficial to, because this is how you get people to do what you want in your life, right? You have to find a way to sell them, to make it beneficial for them. So the reason why most people want these call-in shows that are about personal topics, and the reason that I do them is I need to sell, and I'm not kidding about this, and I mean sell not in some cheesy Herb Tarlek corner lot used car salesman stuff where you look like your pants are made off the back seat of an old Volkswagen. What I'm talking about is sell to someone the benefit to them. So this is the first philosophical conversation, and I shit you not about this. This is so radical, so revolutionary. It's what gets me up every day. This is the very first philosophical conversation in the history of the world, in the history of philosophy, where it is philosophical morals, abstractions, and concepts directly applicable to personal life issues that can be acted upon. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. Yep.
So, if you want me to do more philosophical abstract concepts, you have to figure out how to sell it to me. How does it benefit me? How does it benefit philosophy? Like, if you're asking a girl out, you want it to benefit her, right? Oh, I'm going to take you to your favorite restaurant. I'm going to take you to go see your favorite band. I'm going to give you a great night, or whatever it is, right? You have to sell things to people in life. Life is about convincing people. Life is about motivating change in people. Life is about selling ideas, arguments, goods, services, employment, you name it. So how do you get people to do what you want? You figure out the benefit to them. Now, if you can't think of a benefit to them, then it's about you. And that's fine. We can go and do that, right? You can go up to some girl, right? And you can say to the girl, well, I just want you to go out with me. And she's like, well, basically, why would I want to? And it's like, I don't care. I just want you to go out with me. I'm not saying there's anything in it for you. That wouldn't really work, right?
Correct, my friend. Yep.
Or if you're trying to get a job and they say, well, what's your resume? You say, I don't want to give you a resume. I just want you to hire me. I just want you to pay me $1,000 an hour. Pay me $1,000 an hour because, that would make my life so much better. What would the person hiring you say?
No.
It's got to be mutual benefit. Now, if you come to someone with a request, right, and you say, Steph, I want you to do more philosophical content. I appreciate that, respect that, and I agree with that in some ways. The question is, how do you make it of benefit to the other person? Because that's life. If you want someone to marry you, they have to be better off for marrying you than not marrying you. Otherwise, they're masochistic or something like that. So, and this is a big lesson for life as a whole, right? When you're thinking about convincing people, make it of benefit to you. Make it of benefit to you. That's baked into, right? You ask a girl out, of course you think your life's going to be better if you go out with her, right? But how do you make it of benefit to the other person? So how do I sell philosophy? I make it of benefit to individuals. If you follow philosophical principles as I outline, describe, and prove them, what happens? Well, you start acting with integrity and virtue, which means you gain self-respect. When you gain self-respect, you become predictable in your behavior because integrity is predictability in behavior. When you're predictably positive and virtuous in your behavior, you attract virtuous people in your life who will love you. If you can attract and keep virtuous people in your life through consistently moral behavior, your life gets better and better. Conversely, you drive evildoers and corrupt people and insulters, abusers, and underminers and saboteurs, they will be driven out of your life through direct confrontation and a demand for moral behavior from them, right? Which is why I say to people, if you've got people who've wronged you in your life, sit down and talk with them and see how they react, see how they do, see what they say in return to you having issues with them, because, we all have issues with each other from time to time. And, maybe you listen to me about Bitcoin. Could be a plus there too, but I'm selling happiness. I'm selling happiness, right? A personal trainer might be selling abs. A dietitian might be selling slenderness, right? A teacher might be selling knowledge. I am teaching reason equals virtue equals happiness. And I tell you how to get there every step of the way. And I also say it's an extreme sport and it's going to F you up from time to time with a sideways, ungreased dildo through the ear. So I make it exciting because it is. I make it challenging because it is. And I make it an extreme sport of courage and integrity with the great goal of love, self-respect, and happiness on the other side. And right now, I'm teaching you how to get what you want in life, which is to make what you want of benefit to the other person. If you go to an auction and you want a particular item, let's say it's some ring, you want the ring, well, you have to make it beneficial to the person who's selling it, which means you have to agree upon a price. And that price is going to be you giving up some of what you want and them giving up some of what they want, right? If you're going to get a job at McDonald's, you want to get paid $1,000 an hour, they want you to work for free and still be highly motivated. I mean, I know that's an extreme, but you find something in the middle where you give up some of what you want in order for the other person to get what they want. Standing and stating what you want without referencing the benefit to the other person is a very youthful idea. And what I mean by that is I'm not trying to say anything negative about you at all, but what I'm saying is that if you've been a parent, your kids will say, I want dessert, I want candy, I want a piece of fruit, I want Frutella, I want Mentos, I want. And that's fine. That's what kids are supposed to do. And kids aren't supposed to say, and Mom, Dad, I've laid out this flow chart of all the benefits for you, right? They don't do that because they're just thinking about what they need. And it's the parent's job to figure out what the kids need and within reason, try to work to facilitate and provide to it. But when you get to sort of full-fledged, full-throated, mature adulthood, what you're supposed to do, and this is, again, I appreciate you bringing this up, and I'm sure you do this a million times. It's just a reminder to make sure that this is an abstract value and virtue. You have to figure out how it's beneficial to the other person. And you do that for reasons of training your empathy and also to avoid the sin and shame of exploitation. Right? And so that's what I mean when I say you want me to do more philosophical abstract topics. Sell me. Sell me on it. How does it benefit me? And that's what I'm asking.
Let me sell you, my friend. So here's the thing. You have done a masterful job at bringing those philosophical topics to the personal. And that's what brings people in. That's what keeps me engaged and other people engaged. And it's awesome. What I would like for you to do, if I can be so bold, is to map out the topic on your own in a singular video that you can reference when you're talking to these people. So I guess
okay, I'm going to stop you here, and I appreciate that. And I hate to be annoying after just having asked you this question, but I'm going to suggest a different approach. So first of all, you said it keeps me engaged and other people too, right? So everyone thinks that the first thing about sales is talking. No. What's the first thing about sales?
Questions.
So, Steph, Why don't you do more philosophical topics? Why do you do so many call-in shows? Help me understand your business, your needs. I mean, you go into a car dealership, do they just say, I have this great car for you. It's really fast. It's snazzy. It's a sports car, and it's got wingtips. They don't, right? What's the first thing that salespeople do when you walk into a car dealership?
What are you looking for today?
What are your needs? Do you have a family? Do you have kids? How much do you drive every year? Do you want an electric car? What's your... They ask questions rather than, right? So the, quote, right answer when I say sell me is, Steph, tell me a little bit about why you do this, about why you do that, why you do the other. So I understand whether I can provide value. Saying to me, well, there are some people who like philosophical topics. Do you think that's telling me something I don't know?
No.
Right. I've been doing it for 20 years. Actually, I've been doing philosophy for 43 years. There's a lot that I know about it, right? So what you don't want to do when you're trying to sell something to people is say to them things that they already know as if it's new information. Does that make sense?
Right.
So you say, well, Steph, why do you? And say, oh, well, so let's reverse it, all right? If that's all right. So you be me, and I'll be you, all right?
I'm Steph. Hello.
Hey, listen, I've had some thoughts. So how much do you enjoy the philosophical topics in the show?
I love them. Absolutely love them.
If you sort of had to rank them sort of 1 to 5, because you got your truth abouts, you got your current events, you got your call-in shows, and you've got, movie reviews or whatever, where would you put the abstract philosophical topics, just out of curiosity, on that sort of 1 to 5 scale?
Abstract go to 5, and personal topics go to 4. They're very close. I love them all.
And I'm so sorry, is 5 the lowest priority or the highest?
It's the highest.
Okay, so the highest is the 5. Now, I'm sorry for not knowing your business. Obviously, you know your business much better than I do. But I'm curious, Steph, if you most want to do philosophical topics, why do you do a lot of call-in shows?
Because that is my audience, and that's who donates.
Uh-huh.
That is who listens, and that is the future of this show.
So you've asked people, and they've said number 1 is call-in shows, right?
Seems to be, yeah.
Well, yeah, actually, I have asked people, and that is the number 1. Okay, so the number 1 is call-in shows. Now, I've done a sort of rough look at your feed, right? And I'm sure that you could categorize things a bunch of different ways. But it seems to me there's sort of 5 to 7 call-in shows for every single abstract philosophy show. Does that sort of accord with your experience of doing the show?
Right, yep.
Right. So if it's close, right, then why wouldn't they be close to even, if that makes sense? And again, I'm just curious. Like if it's like, well, I slightly prefer the abstract philosophy to the call-in shows, then why are there like 5 to 7 to 8 times many more call-in shows? Just because I'm trying to sort of figure out your mindset here.
Well, people are the audience. That's what makes the show the show. If I was just sitting in a room talking about philosophy, nobody would hear it. And it would be me talking into an audience to my computer, and I would have a nice audio file, but I wouldn't have any audience.
Well, you'd have some audience, right? Maybe it wouldn't. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be as big, right?
Right. Yeah. It'd be much smaller.
But I wonder, and this is me just thinking out loud, so maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. But I just wonder if it might have been a bit of a vicious cycle. Let me just make a brief case for you here, and then you can tell me if I'm full of nonsense, which I probably am. Which is, what if you started getting a lot of requests for call-in shows? Just because if you're in the desert and you open up the water stand, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who want water because they're dying of thirst. And you took that as a signal for ever and ever, amen. And that has become kind of cyclical. In other words, because you're doing so many call-in shows, you're generally, even now, only attracting the kind of people who want the call-in shows. And it's sort of a distorted market signal, if that makes sense. So you put out a bunch of call-in shows and people are like, wow, I love these call-in shows. And the people who like the abstract philosophy are like, I'm not so big on the call-in shows, I'll go somewhere else. And now you think that it's the major audience demand when it is in fact kind of circular because you put out so many call-in shows. Most of the people who are left are the people who like the call-in shows. Does that make any sense?
That is 100% my question.
Okay, so that's a possibility. Now, the other thing too is that, and it's always an interesting question, right? I think about bands. So if you've got a band that has a bunch of hits in the past and they've got a new album, right? You ever go to the concert and what was it David Spade said once about REM, just play Radio Free Europe and don't screw it up. Like on the album, don't do anything weird and jazzy with it. Like I remember seeing Britney Spears do Baby One More Time in some slow rent Berlin cabaret style jazzy thing. And it was like, no, that's not the song. I don't know what you're doing. It's not the song. So why do you think that the bands put out the new songs when they know basically everyone's there for the old songs?
Well, they're hoping for a hit.
Yeah, okay, but let's say they don't have a particular hit, or maybe the album has just come out and they're playing the new stuff, even though most people are there for the old stuff. Why do you think the bands do that?
Are you suggesting they're filling the noise?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if they have the hits, okay, that's guaranteed audience coming in, and they have an hour or two of playtime. Are they filling the void with those new hits, or those new songs, rather?
Well, no, because they could. They have enough old songs that they could do an hour and a half easy. I don't know. I think that the reason that the bands do the new songs is that they also need to retain their enthusiasm. Because I assume that the band is more excited to do a new song than a song they've been doing for 20 years, right?
Yeah, I'm a musician, so I can.
Okay, so you know that. Like I remember seeing a band, a bar band, and they said, we'll take any requests except, what was the one song they wouldn't do?
What?
House of the Rising Sun. We'll do every song but House of the Rising Sun, because they probably have done it for, 15 years or whatever it is, right? And it's a real belty song, could be rough on the singer, right? So the bands do their new material because, they want to sell new material, they've written new material, and they're more excited by the new material than the old material. So there's a balance, right? So the band is doing the stuff that excites them the most, but also that gets the most audience members in is to do the older stuff. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'm wondering, Steph, I'm just wondering, do you think that it has an effect on your enthusiasm to do less of what excites you the most?
Forgot I was Steph, but yes.
Right. So I think that's without a doubt. Like if you're doing the call-in shows, which I know you enjoy, let's say you enjoy them like a 7 or an 8, but let's say the abstract philosophy you enjoy a 10. I wonder if your call-in shows wouldn't be better, even better. They're fantastic. But what if they were even better because you did more of the stuff that you wanted? And what if, because you had just played 2 new songs, you dug into the old songs with even more and better energy? Like, what if you do more of what you want, that translates into enthusiasm for the show as a whole and draws back the people who like the abstract topics? And you can still do the call-in shows, but maybe you'll do them even better and with more enthusiasm, because maybe you feel a little bit like a chain to the call-in shows. It's what people want, and I'm good at it, but those are the old hits, not bringing in a new audience, and maybe it's affecting your level of energy and enthusiasm too.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
So that's just a brief example of, ask questions and then provide a benefit to the other person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do.
And then the other thing you can do is you could run a poll on X or some other place, even if it's only got 100 people or 50 people or whatever, and you could ask what kind of shows do you like the most, and at least come in with some data. Because saying I and some other people prefer those shows is something that I know. But I'd like my data is that people really like the call-in shows. But I think that the circular problem is important, which is because I've been doing the call-in shows for so long and less abstract philosophy, maybe everyone who's left really likes the call-in shows. But that's sort of that's a circular piece of data. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. Well, do you think the audience has changed at all? Like, do you think you'd gain new audience for, covering these basic philosophical topics? I mean, it's been a long time. I've been listening to you for a long time, and I feel like the political atmosphere, at least, has changed dramatically since when I first started watching.
Sorry, I missed the purpose of telling me that the political atmosphere has changed. Sorry if I missed the
Yeah,
point of
yeah.
that.
No, that's okay. The political atmosphere has changed dramatically in the last 10, 12, 15 years since I've started watching. And it seems like you might pull in some new people when you cover some of these more basic topics because, you're assuming that everybody that's listening, well, you're assuming that they know what's going on, but, you know, these new people, they don't know what's going on with UPB and, you know, libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism. Who knows what's going on? So it might be worth it to cover some of these basic topics for the new people.
Yeah, I think that's good. And you could say, look, one of the things that was very popular early on was your 17-part Introduction to Philosophy series. Maybe that could be dusted off and redone with slightly less of a potato camera and bad audio or something like that and non-gray
Yeah.
hair. But yeah, so I would say that those kinds of topics are how it is that you can try and convince to people. Because if you convince them of their own self-interest, then it's sustainable. If they just do it for you, it generally doesn't tend to be sustainable. But if you do it because it's the person's own self-interest, it tends to be much more sustainable. Like I'm aware, I think every happily married man and woman is aware that you never stop selling the virtues and values of marriage to your partner.
Right.
Right. So like every morning, my wife will generally get up a little earlier than me, not because she makes great coffee, but because she makes great coffee. And I'm aware that when I come downstairs, how I come downstairs is going to determine the quality of the day in many ways for both of us, right? So what do? I come down, scoop her into my arms, give her a big hug and a kiss, maybe a bit of grabble, and ask her how her day's doing, how she slept, and all of that. And I want the day to start off really well for both of us because I want her every day to say, I'm really glad I married this guy and he makes my life better and happier and all of that, right? So, and, I'm asking her, what do you want to do with the day and what's best for you and all of that sort of stuff. So I do think that when you learn to put things that you want into the benefit of someone else. Now, you don't want to be manipulative and lie and all of that. And there will be times where you want to put things to the benefit of other people and you can't, right? Like if the closest restaurant to you is an Indian restaurant, but you want it to be an Italian restaurant, I mean, you could make the case, but it's probably not going to change, right? Where,
Right.
but trying to find out what motivates people, what's better for them, and then looking for a win-win. Because if you simply state what you like, then you're saying, well, I will win if you change. It's like, okay, right? I mean, I'm sure there's a guy who speaks Esperanto fluently who wants me to do all of my shows in Esperanto or Klingon or Elvish or something even crazier like Turkish, right? So there are people who, and it's like, Steph, it would really benefit me if you did your show in Turkish because I'm really much better at speaking Turkish than I am at English. And it's like, okay, but right. So, but I have to look at the bigger picture. So asking people questions and figuring out if you can make it a win-win for them, planting seeds, being patient, coming back. I think that's how you get people to do what you want, which is to say, what I want is benefits us both. And if you can't make a case that what you want benefits you both, it's probably not a good idea to make the case. And again, I'm just saying
Yeah.
this to you as a whole and to the world as a whole, because I really want you guys to get what you want out of life. And you have to make it not what do I want, but what benefits us both, if that makes sense.
There's you, there's me, and there's we. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we want. All right. 100%.
All right. Well, man, thanks. Really appreciate that. And I will mention, though, I will, of course, mention later that subscriptions are live on X. What can I tell you? Subscriptions are live on X. And I am going to give staggering levels of benefits to the first, say, 100 people who sign up. So what you do, I'm just going to tell you, right? So here's what you do. You go to me on X. x.com/Stefan Molyneux, STEFANMOLYNEUX, because the cursed gods above gave me a combination of Polish gay Stephen and aristocratic French with a silent X at the end. So what can I tell you? x.com/Stefan Molyneux. And you can find the subscribe button near the top right of my profile, right above my name, Free Domain with Stefan Molyneux, MA, and that's on both mobile and desktop. Scroll down. Email is optional to share with me. You don't have to. Click subscribe, $12 a month. Enter your payment details on the next screen. Enjoy the community. Now, let me tell you. I will tell you, my friends. This is going to be the first place I go to when I go online. I'm going to go to this community. Of course, I'll go to Locals and I'll go to Subscribestar. Haven't forgotten you guys. You were with me through the wilderness, so I'm still there with you. And I'm going to broadcast to this place Sundays, 11 a.m. It's going to be private. Now, I will tell you this. You have a question. I got a whole new tab called Subscribers. The subscribers get first answers. You got something you want to chat about for 10 minutes. I'm sure I'll have the time. We can chat about it for 10 minutes. You get access to StephBot AI. You get access to the Bitcoin AI that I've created. You get access to the real-time relationships AI that I've created, which we fed a large number of call-in shows in, and of course my book, Real-Time Relationships, to really help you figure out how to solve problems in your relationships in case you don't have time for an hour or two with me on the phone, public or private call. You get 12 hours of the French Revolution history, which is some of the best work I've ever done. You get the 23-part History of Philosopher series, which has more than all the abstract philosophy that you could conceivably imagine, along with my intermittent rants about what I think about philosophical movements as a whole, going all the way from the pre-Socratics up past David Hume. I stopped right before Immanuel Kant, which I will get to at some point, but that research is staggering because he's such a big philosopher and he's a real challenge to take on. And I want to make sure I do a good job. You get access to hundreds of super spicy shows, the stuff that was just a little bit too electric and discombobulating and wild for the main feed. And there's just a massive amount of good stuff that's up there. It's going to be a great community. You can chat with each other as far as I understand it and just have really great conversations. And you can reply if you want. It's an option. It's turned off by default. I think you can turn it on where you can say, I'm a subscriber. Because I put my number in and I'm a subscriber. And I would like to thank everyone who's jumping in to subscribe right now. It really does help a lot. It really does help a lot. The costs, of course, of doing the show are not free. And I hope that you will find value in what it is that I'm doing and, give me the boost and the encouragement and the resources to help out. And I hugely appreciate it, humbly and deeply and gratefully appreciate it. And I absolutely swear and promise that I will make it worth your while beyond your wildest dreams. I will make it worth your while. Give me $12 a month. I give you chunks of soul and a kidney if need be. So I really do appreciate that. Where is it better to be subscribed? Whatever works best for you. Whatever works best for you. Locals is good. X is good. I guarantee you, I'm going to do at least one and probably more than one subscriber only stream for X, at least 1 or 2 a week. So that's going to be probably 2 to 4 hours of just private stuff for X. I already do private shows for Subscribestar and for Locals, but X will be also a good place for that as well. It's a crazy amount of benefits, honestly. And even the AIs are fantastic. We spend a lot of time with 3 of us really working and tweaking on the AIs to get them to a really exciting and great place. So I hope that you will check it out. Again, x.com/Stefan Molyneux, subscribe button top right, and scroll down. You don't have to share email. It's up to you. And then you can subscribe and you can enjoy the community. And after subscribing, you can find subscriber-only posts under subs on my profile. So I hope you will check that out, and I welcome you to the community. All right. Oh my gosh, do we have a lot of people who wish to chat? Ooh, let's get somebody who doesn't like me in. John, you are on the line, my friend. How can we rub neurons together and create a genuine spark of thought. John. Johnny. Johnny. Hello. Are you with me? You need to
Yes,
unmute.
hello.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm John. I'm the logician that I was talking about your UPB. I was actually calling in to talk about that, but that last caller brought up a better point, which was he asked about why you don't talk about philosophy.
That's not, no,
And you
that's not,
are
no,
you
hang on. That's not what he asked, though. What he asked was, why don't I do more abstract philosophy? Not that I don't talk about philosophy, but why don't I do more abstract philosophy, if that makes sense?
you don't really do any philosophy. I mean, as far as I could tell, it's like you said, it's a lot of personal call-ins, which borders on. Are you a therapist?
What do you mean?
Do you have credentials?
You mean, do I have a piece of paper
Did
from
you
the
study
government?
therapy, psychology?
I mean, I've taken psychological courses in university. You mean, am I a licensed therapist? Good Lord, no. Absolutely not.
Oh, okay. It seems that you'd like to be based on like what the vast amount of whatever you do is uh, personal problems. But you say you're a philosopher, correct?
Yes.
Now, why would it be weird for you to talk about philosophy?
Why would it
See,
be
because I
weird? Hang on, I'm trying to understand what you mean. Why would it be weird for me to talk about philosophy?
or why wouldn't you want to talk about philosophy? I mean, you're talking. You said something which is asinine. You're asking him to sell you on talking about philosophy, which is really weird. If you
Okay, can
are a
you just
philosopher,
John, come on. Let's be adults here. Can you have a
I am an
conversation?
adult.
Hang on. Can you have a conversation without these like stupid girly insults and it's asinine and you don't do
No,
philosophy
because
and
that
it's
is asinine.
weird and like
It's an asinine.
can you actually just
It's
make it
bizarre.
hang on. Can you actually just make a case that's we can have a respectful conversation?
But I was trying to listen to make you make the case for why, and you're asking him just to sell you on something, and then a lot of really stupid analogies that have nothing to do with philosophy. I teach this stuff. I mean, I teach logic. I specialize in relevance logic, but I also
Fantastic.
teach.
Okay. So can you make
Sure.
a logical argument without an ad hominem?
I teach general introductory courses, and I do it. A philosopher doesn't need to be sold on teaching philosophy. I mean, I'll teach it for free to have people that want to do it or hear it,
Okay, so
and I have.
what I'm asking is, can you make
But
an argument without an ad hominem, since you are a logician?
you're because you are making. I'm not making ad hominems. I'm saying this is. There's no. You're trying to sell something to people.
Okay,
You're
so
trying to sell.
stupid, asinine, and weird, those aren't ad
Yeah.
hominems in your universe, John. Is that the reality that you work with?
No, that's not calling you stupid.
You
Calling you
kidding me?
stupid.
Stupid,
I'm not.
asinine, and weird, those aren't ad hominems. Those aren't insults. You're just making a logical argument, like Socrates would.
Calling you stupid with an ad hominem. I'm saying what you said was stupid and asinine because it wasn't an argument either. You're not giving the man an argument. You were telling him he has to sell you on why you should teach philosophy if you are indeed a philosopher. And that's bizarre. That's stupid.
Oh,
And
now
yes,
bizarre and
asinine.
stupid is also your argument. So you don't
I don't.
know how to make an argument without an
I'm not
insult.
making an argument. I'm not making an argument.
Okay,
I'm
I
not
agree.
making
Could you
an
make an
argument.
argument then?
Yeah, if you could make one for why you should not teach philosophy instead of trying to say, I need to be sold on why. That's what I was saying. I wanted to talk about your UPB, which is crap, but this is better because this gets to the heart. This gets to the heart of the thing. You're not a
Is
philosopher.
John,
That's the
is this how
problem.
you teach your students? Like, let's say that a student is doing something that you think is incorrect or wrong. Just say it's asinine, it's stupid, it's crap, it's weird.
But
I mean,
I'm
is
not.
this? Hang on, let me finish my sentence. Let me finish. Like like in a mature adult, we can have a back and forth. So, do you insult people who are getting things wrong? Is that your goal as a
No,
teacher?
no, because the students that I teach want to learn philosophy. They're there for that. So I don't belittle anybody. And
Okay,
even
fantastic. So let's say that you're right. I've got something completely wrong in the realm of philosophy. So how does insulting me and putting me down and calling me asinine and stupid and weird, how does that teach me anything?
I'm not going to you because I'm not here to teach you anything. You should know these things. You supposedly studied the history of philosophy and all this other stuff. I don't. You call yourself the greatest goddamn philosopher, for fuck's sake. So it's like, why should I have? I shouldn't be able to have to teach you anything. That
So
this is.
you're not here to teach me anything, so what are you here for?
I'm asking you
No, what are you
why
here for? I'm genuinely asking
anybody.
you. I'm asking you, what are you here for? You're not here to teach me anything. You're not here to instruct the audience, because you have access to an audience. So you are not here to teach me anything. You are not here
I'm
to
asking.
instruct. Hang
I'm
on, you're not.
asking.
Hang on, you got to just let me finish. Like, I don't know if you've like over caffeinated or something, but you keep talking in my ear. So you're not here to teach me anything. You're not here to teach my audience anything. So what are you here for?
I was here to talk about UPB at first until I heard that last caller, and that's like that gets more to the heart of the thing because I was wondering why none of what you like your arguments or whatever are all circular and really bad. So it's I was just wondering why, and it's
Now my
because you're not a
arguments aren't just dumb,
philosopher.
stupid, and asinine. They're circular and really, and really bad. This is what you
Yeah,
call making an argument?
like horrible. I mean horrible. I
Mm.
mean not even
Also
my
horrible.
first.
Yeah. So you can just keep using these girly tween ridiculous insults, or you can actually make a counter argument.
Well, not even my first like introductory people that are just getting into logic make mistakes you do. So it's
Oh, fantastic.
I read
Okay, so give me a mistake that I've made.
well I don't I mean I don't even I read your other book too, the other Art of the Argument, I guess it was called. I read that last month just to see. Actually I didn't read the whole thing. I stopped after you got the definitions for validity and the syllogisms wrong. So it's like you mixed up everything in the first like a basic syllogism. So it's really that's why I say it's bad. I don't have to go into it. I'm not really even here to talk about that so much. I'm just wondering why anybody would have to sell you on wanting to teach philosophy if they because that caller seemed to want to learn a little bit
Mhm.
about why would he have to be why would you have to be sold on that? Like
Okay, you do understand what a theoretical is, right?
uh-huh.
Okay. So I started in philosophy. I did a 16, 17 part series, Introduction to Philosophy, which you know because you've been listening to the show and I talked about it. I've done a whole series
No,
on the history.
I haven't been
hang on.
listening to the show.
Oh, you
I
haven't been
don't
listening
know
to the
that
show.
much about
Okay.
I mean, I've been listening like kind of the past few months because
Okay.
so a student of mine told me that you're full of shit. So that's why I started listening. And
Okay, got it. All right. So fdrpodcast.com, it's where my the list of my shows are, right? So if I go to fdrphilosophy.com and I enter a search for philosophy. Now, look, you would disagree, of course, that it is, but I'm just looking at, what do we got here? Metaphors as Philosophy, that's show 186, which is back in 2006. And then Radical Skepticism, Fighting Philosophy, and then starting in August of 2006, I do an Introduction to Philosophy series, which is 17, all the way from metaphysics to epistemology to ethics
right.
and to politics. And again, you may agree, you may disagree, and so on, but I've done that. And I'm scrolling through
Yeah,
here. I have probably
that's
200
all
shows. Sorry, again, just let me finish. I have 200 shows making philosophical arguments. I have debated with philosophy professors, both live and online. I did a debate with Professor Safatli in Brazil some years ago.
I saw
So
some
hang
of your
on, just let
debate.
me, again, if you can just calm yourself down and let me just finish, and then you can talk all you want. And I've got a book called Essential Philosophy, which is a book on taking on sort of three arguments. One is, of course, the Cartesian argument for the sort of that we're a brain in a tank being controlled by an external demon, and that the only thing you can know is that you exist. I think, therefore I am. And I take on the arguments for free will versus determinism. I take on, and I give a sort of a sped up and concise version of my argument for ethics, which is UPB. So I also have books on voluntarism, also known as anarcho-capitalism. And so I have a number of books. I have The Art of the Argument, which is a layperson's book on how to debate with some reasonable level of integrity. And so, like it or not, agree with it or not, I've certainly taken on philosophical topics. My graduate degree thesis was on the history of philosophy in a faculty which was not very pro-free market or very pro-free market, very pro-individual reason and so on. And I took on Immanuel Kant, and I took on Plato, and I took on Locke, and I took on Hegel. And it was quite a long thesis. I did get an A, which, you can agree or disagree, but it was a graduate school thesis on the history of philosophy where I put through a rather large set of arguments. So, Aristotle said, and I kind of agree with him, and I'm almost done, and I appreciate your patience, but Aristotle said, and I would agree with him, that we are what we repeatedly do. Now, you may disagree with my arguments. You may think that my arguments are false and bad and wrong, and that's fine. And you may know way better than my thesis advisors from many moons ago who reviewed my thesis and so on. But being a bad philosopher is still being a philosopher, right? So even if you disagree, you can't argue that I do a lot of philosophy, and you may, of course, I'm sure you do think that I do it badly or wrong, but that's different from not doing philosophy at all, if that makes sense.
But from what I've seen, you don't do any philosophy. That's what I mean. I don't know how you got your degree. I'd have to see it or whatever. Your thesis, I don't know. But it's like I said, it's asinine that you would want to be sold on wanting to teach philosophy.
Well, hang on. So let me ask you this. This is a basic logical question, right? So if I genuinely wanted to be sold on doing philosophy, then why have I been running a philosophy show for 20 years? Just logically, if I would need to be sold on it, why would I have already done it I started getting into philosophy in my mid-teens, so it's been over 40 years now. So do you think that you might be misinterpreting something if you think that I need to be sold on doing philosophy when I've been doing it for over 40 years?
No, because what philosophy is, at its essence, is teaching people how to think. What I see you do is telling people, I don't know, different opinions on this or that, but I don't see anything about how you're not teaching anybody to think or how to make an argument. From what I see, you don't make any arguments. On Twitter or whatever, on X, I don't see. You say people don't make arguments, but you give an assertion or some crazy opinion. You don't make any argument for that. You just take it as gospel, and that your listeners should too. So that's another thing. If you're a philosopher, you have to make arguments. And like I said, I read the student read your book, and that's the only reason I know anything about you is I started listening to, and I read the same book, and it's like you get basic things wrong, and it's like if a philosopher is not going to do that, you need to know these things. So it's for me, that's why you don't do philosophy. That's like you said, you're trying to sell something, which is fine. Just don't call yourself a philosopher while you're trying to do it.
Right. So clearly, I don't need to be sold on the value of teaching philosophy or studying philosophy or communicating philosophy. I don't need to be taught the value of that because that's what I've already been doing. So my purpose in this conversation, and maybe you didn't hear this at the beginning because you came into the lecture late, but what I would say, certainly what I was trying to do with this fellow was to try and give him a perspective on how better to get what he wants in his life, which is if you want other people to do something that you want them to do, if you can frame it in a way where it's beneficial for them as well as you, that's a better way to get what you want out of life. And
Yeah,
so the purpose was not to sell me on philosophy, because he wanted to sell me on doing more abstract philosophy, and I was giving him a series of ways in which he could achieve that goal by convincing me to do that as a benefit to me as well as to others. So I already love the value of abstract philosophy. It's my favorite thing to do on the show. So I was trying to tell him, and I said, this isn't about me, this isn't about philosophy, because I'm already sold, but this is a way of helping people to understand how to get what they want by providing mutual benefit and value to other people when you are trying to convince them of something.
yeah, but that's the thing. Is like you shouldn't need any convincing. If you're a philosopher, you don't need any convincing to actually teach philosophy
Right.
or teach
So,
people
and
how
that's,
to
and
think.
you're repeating exactly what I said in the conversation. This isn't about me, right? This is just an example. This is why I asked about abstractions. So he said, Steph, I want you to do more abstract philosophy, which I love doing abstract philosophy. I don't need to be sold on that. But I was giving him an example of how to communicate with someone to get that other person to do what they want, if that makes sense.
No, not really, because it seemed like you were just making a lot of dumb analogies for why you shouldn't be sold on teaching philosophy or any kind of philosophy in the first place. I mean, I don't. What it every time I go on just to see, like, I was going to call in one of these days. 'Cause I don't have a lot of time, but it's today I do. So I was just you don't display any. There's like no coherent behavior or anything that would indicate you actually like teaching or teach anything philosophical at all about any subject. I mean, you could talk about any subject and make it philosophical.
Okay,
That's
let
just
me
what I
ask you
do.
this then.
You don't do that.
So what is my argument? What is my definition of free will?
Your definition of free will. I don't know. Something about what is it?
Well, no, you say I don't do philosophy, which means that you know what I do and don't do. So
Well,
would you
from what
agree
I
that,
see,
hang on,
yeah.
would you agree that the definition of philosophy, would you agree that the definition of free will would be in the area of philosophy, that it would be a philosophical question to work on the issue of free will?
Free will is one of the tenets of philosophical questions. Yeah.
Okay. So if you say I don't do philosophy, then what you're saying is I don't have a definition of free will, or I have a definition of free will that is not objective or rational or empirical in any way.
You can have a definite free will, but it could be a really bad definition or horribly thought out. But that doesn't make it philosophy. It's like you could say free will is whatever. It's anything you want it to be, but it doesn't necessarily make it philosophical. What you have to do is philosophy. It's not easy to think about these questions. The real thinking, deep thinking, is not easy. That's why these kids that I teach, everyone I teach, I tell them that it's not easy to actually think. But what is your thing on free will? What's your definition?
Okay, so you don't know my definition of free will. Okay, let me ask you, what is my definition of morality?
Morality. It's whatever I think it's whatever is universal, right? Whatever can be applied universally or something like that.
No, that's not it. Come on, man. Physics is universal. The scientific method is universal. Math is universal. None of those things, and they all applied universally, but none of those things would be morality. Come on, man.
No, math, physics, and all that is not necessarily. It's universal in the sense of the universe. It's for our universe. Sure, it seems to be working, but we don't know anything. We don't know anything about what could be in another universe or parallel universes or whatever. We take it
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
basic.
So you said universal, but you think it also includes the nether or heaven or some other Star Trek
Yeah, we
universe.
take it. That's
Something can't be universal because there could be other
yeah.
universes.
There was another caller that tried to explain this kind of to you, but you don't even understand the difference in inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. So he was trying to say that we don't know that the sun will come out tomorrow, and you were saying no, we do, we definitely do. But that type of reasoning is inductive, which I don't know if you didn't go through that in your whatever you studied in college.
So just for those of you who don't know, inductive reasoning is where you have 100% certainty based upon the premises and conclusions. So deductive reasoning is all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Given the assumptions and given the reasoning.
Inductive. Yeah.
Right. Inductive reasoning is where you establish probabilities based upon prior information. So it's very likely that the sun will. Hang on, let me finish. It's funny because you complain that I don't teach philosophy, then you try to interrupt me when I'm trying to teach the difference. So the example that I give in my book is if I have a neighbor and she has, I know she has 20 cats, but I've only ever seen 19 cats. But every single one of those 19 cats is a black cat with a white face. Then I would be pretty sure that the 20th cat is also a black cat with a white face because those are the kind of cats that she likes or prefers. I don't know 100%, but I can make that fairly significant guesstimate. In the same way, I don't know for 100% certainty that the sun will rise tomorrow. That's very true. But we have to live our lives, or we generally do live our lives, as if the sun will rise. Now, the sun may not rise for me tomorrow if I get hit by a bus. There could be some gathering space armada on the other side of the sun that is about to blow it up overnight. I mean, this within the realm of possibility, right? It's not like a square circle or something which would be impossible. And so, for sure, the fact that the sun will rise tomorrow is not 100% guaranteed in the same way that you get 100% certainty with deductive reasoning. But in general, we live our life as if on the 100% certainty as a whole.
Well, I don't know if you have a really bad memory or something, but you were fighting with this caller because you forgot what inductive reasoning was. And he was trying to explain that, no, we actually don't know. It's probable, very probable the sun will come out, but you kept fighting on this, which is like, that's why I don't understand.
Okay, so I can't, hang on. I can't reference some call from the past. Because I don't, I've done thousands of these calls, so just hang tight. Would you agree that I'm somewhat in the ballpark in the difference between deductive and inductive reasoning in my obviously very brief explanation?
Yeah, you got the cliff notes. That's great. But
Fantastic.
My point is,
okay, so I do understand. So I do understand those things.
Science is all done on this inductive thing, and then scientific theories are put out deductively. That is, their logic has to work. But we get it from inductive reasoning. So we don't know these things. Like, will the sun come out tomorrow? Probably, yes. These are the things I'm talking about. You do not teach these things. These are very basic things in reasoning.
I just gave you two analogies, or I gave you one example, which is a very old one about Socrates, and I gave you the analogy from my book. So the idea that I don't teach these things is not correct.
You don't teach these things.
Yeah, except that I just gave you examples of me teaching them, and I literally just taught them. Like I literally just taught this in this call, and now you're saying it doesn't happen when you were literally here when it happens.
I brought it up and had to explain or remind you what inductive reasoning is. But anyway,
okay. So what is my definition? Hang on. What is my definition of morality?
I still don't know. It has something to do with universality. Universality as in the world, not in the universe.
Sorry, universality as in the world. What does that mean?
This is what I'm talking about. So you don't...
No, I'm asking you to explain. Why are you sighing? I'm sitting here as a willing student for you to explain what you mean, and you seem to be getting impatient and angry at me. Is this how you deal with people who want to learn from you? I'm having trouble following this.
I deal with people that say they know everything about philosophy this way, not students that don't know anything.
I'm asking what you mean.
I mean that universality is applied to the world, whatever it can be applied throughout the world.
But hang on, sorry, and I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding something, John. Like I'm genuinely I really want to understand what you're saying. So can it be both only applied to this world and also universal? To me, universal would be more than just this world.
Well, whatever. It's just a term that we use in philosophy. It just means that whatever, if you want to say something is universal, we're not talking about the universe as is, whatever, the entire universe, just the world we live in, not a parallel world or a different one.
Sorry, what do you mean by the world? Do you mean the planet Earth?
Yes, the world.
Okay, so can something be universal, but also only apply to this planet we happen to live on?
Yeah, that's what the term I'm talking. That's what it means. I mean, for this conversation, yeah, I'm not talking about the universe as is, just the world we live on.
But why would there be, if something's universal, why would it have separate rules for this world versus what's not this world?
Because we're talking about the world. When I say universal, I'm talking about just the world we live on.
But,
Because we're
but
talking about
that's a
philosophy. This is
contradiction.
not
Hang on, that's a
we're not talking about
contradiction. Hang
science.
on. But that's a
No,
contradiction. So we have universal laws of physics. They don't just apply to this planet, right?
that's a scientific. When you're talking about science, as in some other theory you want to talk about, you say, "Is this apply universally?" Then you could talk about the entire universe. That's what they usually mean. It's applied to the world and the entire universe and the other planets that might not have been discovered and everything else that might be in the universe. That's when they say it must be applied universally. If they're science, whatever, if they have some sort of theory that says some property or something has to be applied universally. We're not talking about that. I'm not talking about science. This isn't a scientific conversation. We're talking about philosophy. And in philosophy, we use terms like universal to mean the world.
Okay, so
You
is
can,
it my
or you
understanding,
could
hang on,
just say,
so is it my understanding that if we're talking about morals and we're talking about universality, we're only talking about what happens on the world or in the world?
right, our world,
Okay,
what we
so
know here.
if two spacemen go to the moon and one murders the other, morality wouldn't apply because it's not on the world.
If what?
Well, if two men fly off to the moon and one murders the other, it's not wrong because that's not on our world.
No, it still apply. They're human beings that are of this world. Doesn't matter if they do it in
Okay, now
space or
hang
on
on.
the moon.
So what you mean is not the world, but humanity, like human beings.
Yeah, that's what would encompass the world. Every object in the world is part of the world.
Well, but human beings have been off-world, so it's a little confusing, right?
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where human beings go apart from Earth.
Well,
And
it
we're
does
talking
matter
about
if you say that morality is universal only in the world, then it implies that morality would not be universal off-world.
it would still apply. You're still
Okay,
part
so
of the
we're talking about, so then we're talking about universal moral principles that apply everywhere there are human beings, right?
humanity in general.
Okay, so that's
As
not the world. That's wherever it is universal. It's just where there aren't human beings, there would be there's no moral rules for the
that
bacteria on
doesn't
Mars or something like that. But wherever there
yeah,
are human beings, we have moral rules. And so if human beings spread throughout the universe, then we would have universal moral rules that would be to the extent of humanity. So it's just a little confusing for me when you say the world and universal. You mean that the moral rules apply wherever consciousness would be making moral decisions. Is that right?
yeah, if there's a human, yes, that would apply to them.
Okay. What about other conscious entities with the capacity for reasoning and abstractions who use morality? Would they be also subject to universal moral rules?
I have no idea. They could have a completely different brain. I mean, they could have emotions and different things, but it doesn't matter. They could have zero moral sense whatsoever. So,
Well, no,
uh,
that's why I gave you a definition there. Did you not hear it?
would the morality apply to them?
Well, yeah, I gave you a definition. You said, well, they might have no moral sense. And I said that their reasoning, their abstraction, and they themselves, well, let's say they speak and they speak in moral terms and they speak in good and evil and right and wrong. Because if human beings go to, let's say, Alpha Centauri, then the moral rules would apply there just as they would on Earth. But if there are beings like us who reason, who abstract, debate, who talk about ethics and virtues and truth and falsehood and right and wrong, would universal moral rules apply to a consciousness that is very similar to us? Because we say on this earth, even for people who aren't particularly smart, they're still subject to moral rules. Even moral philosophers are subject to moral rules. People in the Arctic and people at the equator, like there's a lot of variation, right? So if there's other consciousness in the universe that is similar to ours, abstract, universal, and language-based and has truth and falsehood, right and wrong, good and evil as general concepts, would they be subject to the same moral rules? In other words, would a creature who murders another creature on Alpha Centauri who's similar to human beings, would that be also wrong?
I don't know. They could base if they had any moral system on something completely different. We don't have it wouldn't apply to that. If some other person that had a race of beings or whatever, I don't know. Then you have to start asking a whole bunch of other questions. In what ways would they have evolved? How would they have even developed a sense? Is it reasonable to transfer our morality as a category to whatever, some other race?
Okay, let me ask you this. So we have, let's say, people in Norway are quite different from, say, the Aboriginals in Australia, right? They developed in very different climates over very different histories. They have very different cultures and religions and mindsets and so on. Would you say that moral rules would apply, the basic ones, rape, theft, assault, and murder, the bans on rape, theft, assault, and murder? Would you say that it is wrong for someone who's Norwegian to murder, and it's also wrong for somebody who's an Australian Aborigine to murder?
Yeah, if you apply whatever moral system you have that makes it wrong universally, then yeah, it would be wrong under that.
And do you, I appreciate that. So do you believe, so even though they're very different and they evolved in very different circumstances and environments and I mean, even their ecosystems and where they're embedded and the whole climate is wildly different. So even though there's a great deal of difference between a Norwegian and an Australian Aborigine, they would both still be bound by universal moral rules.
Right.
Okay. So any creature that had less difference, assuming that's the maximum difference, I mean, we could come up with other standards or whatever, but let's just say that's the maximum difference. So any creature in the universe that had less difference than a Norwegian person and an Australian Aborigine would be bound by the same universal moral rules. Is that right?
No, you're asking a couple different questions, first of all, because we base our own morality, like these prohibitions against rape, theft, murder, all this other stuff, on our religious history. Is that where that comes from? And we've applied that universally throughout the world by force. You know, in countries that have been conquered by Europeans and all that, their rules and their morality have been applied there because that's their tradition has come from that. So I don't. You have to see. You'd have to delve into these questions more. You can't just say, "Well, these things are wrong. Why are they wrong? What makes them wrong?"
I'm sorry. I thought you said they would be bound by the same universal moral rules. I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
No, they're only on this earth. They're bound. We've made them that way by force. Like we've applied these things.
Okay, so Genghis Khan raped his way across Asia, and it was fine and good. In fact, the Mongolians are so proud of Genghis Khan. He's on their currency, and they have statues all over the place. So was what Genghis Khan did wrong by any objective standard, or was it not wrong because it was not disapproved of?
By the traditions of our religious history and all that, yeah, it would be wrong.
No, but the religious history is not. I'm asking about an objective standard. Do you believe there's an objective standard by which Genghis Khan's rape and murder would be considered wrong, regardless of local beliefs?
An objective standard depends on what your standard is. Where do you put your first axiom? That's what I mean.
I'm asking you whether you believe that what Genghis Khan did was immoral, regardless of local. Hang on. Yeah, I mean, you're because and I'll tell you sort of why I'm asking this, and I appreciate it's a great conversation. I appreciate it. So, was Genghis Khan torturing, raping, murdering, slaughtering children, burning them to death, and so on as he ravaged his way across Asia? Was that wrong, even though it was approved of locally by the customs of the time?
Was it wrong? For them, it wasn't. But subjectively, whatever.
No, I understand that. I just said that 3 times. I'm asking you, was it wrong for Genghis Khan to rape and murder and kill?
For us now in the 21st century,
No,
with all the
is there
religious
any
baggage,
forget
it's
all
all
this
wrong.
subjectivity? I understand that. Is there
But then
any
so was
hang on? Is there any objective moral standard by which Genghis Khan can be condemned, regardless of circumstances, culture, or history?
I mean, he can be condemned by that moral uh, philosophy or that moral theory or whatever you want to
Sorry,
call
what
it.
moral theory?
A moral theory that would say all murder is wrong, full stop.
Okay.
But that would also
So do you believe personally that what Genghis Khan did, or Hitler, or Stalin, was it wrong? Was it wrong for Hitler to murder Jews regardless
mass
of?
murder, sure, it's wrong. But by
Okay,
the same
so hang on.
standard,
So mass murder is wrong. So why is it tough to condemn Genghis Khan if you condemn mass murder?
condemning him, yeah, you can condemn him from whatever, how many centuries in the past. Go ahead, condemn. But by the same standard, you'd have to condemn all the other conquests that have happened in the
Sure.
entire history of the of humanity,
Sure.
including our own. So,
Sure. Well, I don't know. I haven't conquered anyone, so I don't take any collective guilt. Okay, so
oh, what? But
do,
we'd have to. I don't understand. What are you talking about? You'd have to condemn the same actions by Europeans that have
sure.
conquered and killed and done things like that.
So why
Even
would
though you
I
yourself have
just,
not.
bro? I just talked about Europeans. I just talked about Hitler, who was from Austria and was a European. So you don't have to bring all of this white guilt stuff in. I talked about it. I fully accept.
There's no
Governments are wrong in the initiation of force all over the world, all throughout history. In the same way that we would look back at, say, Sir Isaac Newton, and we would say, what a brilliant mathematician, and all of that. But we would say that his focus on mysticism and his focus on alchemy was not scientific. He was not good at science uh, because he was doing anti-scientific, anti-rational things. I mean, obviously we can't correct him because he's dead, but we can certainly say that what he did was not scientific and wasn't going to lead to any reproducible scientific outcomes.
Yeah, but that's that really doesn't apply to this. It's like you're talking about two different things. So it's you have to if you're
Sorry,
maintain
are you
one
telling me that are you telling me loftily that science is different from morality?
science is different from morality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
very
good.
different from
I'm fully
morality.
aware that science is different from morality. So, and my audience is fully aware because we're not 5, right? So you don't need to tell me things that are blindingly obvious. That's why I
You
used
just
it as
asked
an
me that.
analogy, right?
You just asked me that question. So yeah, it's different.
Sorry, what question did I ask?
You asked me if science was different from morality, and it's different. So you can't use the same principles that scientists do to outline a theory or whatever for morality. It's a completely different area.
Why can I not use reason and evidence for moral theories?
Because you can't. What reason and evidence for what
Because you
purpose?
can't is not a, come on, man, you're a professor. Because you can't is not an argument.
You're the one making the claim, so you have to make the
No,
claim.
I did not make a claim. I asked a question. Why can I not use reason and evidence for moral theories? You said, well, you can't. It's like, that's not an answer.
I didn't hear that. I heard you
Well,
say
try
something
to
about
listen a
reason and
little more
evidence.
carefully because it's really tough to have a debate with someone who's not listening.
Uh-huh. Well, what reason and evidence to make moral claims? Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking, why can I not use reason, or why can someone not use reason and evidence to make moral claims?
To make moral claim, like in what way? Like what? Because then you're making an argument. Really, this is the argument that Sam Harris makes. It's the same argument about the collective good. They're not where they say,
No,
well,
no, no. Don't lump me in with Sam Harris, man. And also, if you are going to lump me in with Sam Harris, would you also say that he's terribly bad at philosophy as well?
yeah, he's bad. He's not good. None of that's good.
Okay.
It's not
So
good.
why can I not make moral claims based on reason and evidence?
Because that's the same. If you're going to make those type of arguments, those are the same type of arguments that people like Sam Harris use to build up their own theory of human well-being, which is not. It's not all that different from what you're implying, what you're saying. I don't know
Okay.
if you
Do
ever
you
read
think it's
Sam
a good
Harris's
counter
stuff.
argument if I say Why can I not use reason and evidence to make moral claims? Do you think it's a good counter argument to say, well, that's what Sam Harris does?
No, I'm just putting it out there because you don't seem to read. I don't know if you read Sam Harris, but and Dawkins and all these other people, that these are the same. They talk about morality in scientific. They try to use scientific reasoning to get there,
Okay, did
which is
I
how you get.
say
Yeah,
scientific reasoning or did I just say reasoning?
you said science at first,
No.
which is
My
why can't we
question,
use
no. My question
why can't
is,
we use
my question is, why can I not use reason and evidence in the discussion of morality? And you said, well, scientific reasoning that Dawkins and Harris, it's like, that's not what I said, though. I didn't say scientific reasoning. I just said reason and evidence. I did not say scientific reasoning.
as a philosopher, you have to use reason and evidence for any type of a subject or something
Fantastic.
you're approaching.
Is
So what
morality
is the point?
morality the subject
That's
of?
banal.
Hang on. Is morality a valid subject for philosophical inquiry?
Is morality a subject for philosophy? What? Of course it is.
Of course,
It's
of
one of
course
the
it is.
huge.
And the reason I'm asking that is you said we have to use reason and evidence as philosophers, right? And
Yeah,
if
reasonable.
morality, hang on, if morality is a valid subject of philosophical inquiry and we have to use reason and evidence as philosophers, then surely we can use reason and evidence in the discussion of morality. I mean, that's not even, that's the deductive reasoning, right? That's not even inductive.
Yeah, that's banal. That's not even. I'm not even talking about that. Of course, you're using reason. Evidence. I don't know what do you mean by evidence exactly in this context. Like,
Well, so reason would be if you have a moral theory that contradicts itself, it would be invalid philosophically. If you have a moral theory, this is an old Aristotelian argument, but I would update it with the horrors of the 20th century. So Aristotle would say something like, if you have a moral theory that can be used to prove that murder is good, like it kind of doesn't matter what your reasoning is, you've gone wrong somewhere. In other words, if you have a medicine and you say, oh, this medicine kills everyone who takes it, then, it's almost by definition, I mean, it would by definition not be a cure, but in fact a harm. And so if you were to say, I have a moral theory, then it should be logically consistent with itself and with, I won't say even the facts of reality, but let's just say it has to be internally logically consistent, which would be the same thing with a scientific theory. A scientific theory must be internally logically consistent. And then, of course, it must describe the nature of reality and accurately predict the future of behavior of matter and energy and so on, right? And the first test is it logically consistent? I mean, if you have a mathematical proof that starts off with assuming that 2 and 2 make 5, well, you don't have to go beyond that. It wouldn't work. So if you have a moral theory, then it must be logically consistent and ideally, it should also explain some of the basic facts of history, I mean, that we know and that are sort of incontrovertible. So, for instance, if you said, I have a moral theory about the universality of property rights that, not stealing is good, then kleptocracies like, fascist dictatorships or communist dictatorships or North Korea or something, we would say that they would produce negative outcomes for humanity, right? Because if you have a bad theory, it produces negative outcomes, right? If you have a theory that arsenic is a great cure for COVID, then you're just going to kill people. You have a negative outcome. So if a moral theory is logically consistent and also explains why there are certain societies that turn out really badly, like communism killed 100 million people in the 20th century, according to some calculations, or democide was calculated by a professor, I can't remember his name, at the University of Hawaii to have murdered, even outside of war, 250 million people in the 20th century alone. So we would say if you have a moral theory, not only should it be logically consistent, but also it should explain why totalitarianism produces such horribly destructive outcomes, why power corrupts, and so on.
why power corrupt? Yeah, it could explain whatever. You could have a moral theory, but that's, like I said, that's what these guys are already trying to do. Is everything is logically consistent, blah blah blah, for the theory of human well-being, whatever they call it. So,
well, but that's utilitarianism or sort of outcome-based morality, which is not That's not moral principles. They're just, I mean, Sam Harris and other people are saying, well, it's better to have clean water than dirty water. So that which promotes clean water. I mean, that's more engineering or outcome based. To me, that would not be moral philosophy, which is reasoning from first principles, creating logically consistent moral hypotheses or conjectures, and then applying them to the real world to see if it explains when societies do well and when societies do badly. I mean, I think a moral theory, John, should at least explain why human well-being was vastly improved after the 18th, 19th centuries, right? Like why, when you look at sort of human well-being, and I do this in my 2006 series, Introduction to Philosophy, you say, okay, look, our people lived on like $1 a day or 50 cents a day, even in sort of modern dollars. They lived on almost nothing. And then you can sort of see, starting in agriculture in the 18th century, then really moving to capital and the free markets, relative free markets of the 19th century, that human wealth just like went through the absolute roof. Like for the first time in human history, 99% of people weren't just living subsistence crap and dying of starvation, famine, and sorry, a bit of redundant there. Sorry, starvation and bad sanitation and diseases and so on. So you'd have to have a theory that says, why was humanity so absolutely piss poor for 200,000 years, and then over the last 300 years, it kind of went through the roof in terms of productivity. That's a huge thing to explain for a moral theory. UPP does that, but I think, so that when I say there's empirical evidence, you need to explain some of the sort of basic things that have happened particularly over the last couple of 100 years that have, we now make, 300 or 400 times the income that happened in the past. And how can a moral theory explain that? Sorry, I know that was a long speech, so go ahead.
Why would you have to explain any of that? Like, why would you read about the economic movements and social movements and everything else that led to capitalism and everything else?
Why is this funny? We're talking about massive amounts of human suffering and the alleviation
of it. You're talking about morality.
No, but why is this funny though? I mean, I just talked about the Holocaust. I talked about 250 million people being murdered, 100 million people murdered under communism, and people dying and living on. Like, I'm not sure where the comedy is.
The comedy is that you're talking about how people got out of poverty or stopped living a certain way due to the Industrial Revolution and all this other stuff that happened. And we're talking about morality, which is just what is right, what is wrong, everything else. That really, it doesn't go together. Just people have to morality supersedes all of that. It doesn't have anything to do with industrialization or social movements. Social movements arise out of the moral principles or moral decay or moral whatever of the time. It's not the reverse. So
sorry, are you saying, hang on, I want to make sure I understand. So you're saying that moral theories precede improvements in the human condition if those moral theories are more consistent or rational or universal? Or I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to understand what you mean in terms of the cause and effect.
Yeah, morality supersedes all of that. Has nothing to do with how nations develop. It's the starting moral standing that they have. First of all, their own beliefs, what they base the morality on, that leads to where the country goes, or where a nation goes, or a continent.
Right. Okay. So moral beliefs have an effect on human capital. It has an effect on productivity. It has an effect on property rights and free trade and so on. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It has an effect on how movements start. How does any movement, in the 20th century, started because the leaders of that country.
Sorry, what started? Hang on, what started?
Any movement, anything that happened in the 20th century.
What do you mean by movement? Do you mean political movement, or
because you were talking about Stalin and Hitler and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The great dictators and all this. How they started because the country was in a certain state, socially, politically, morally. So all these things contribute. So that morality comes out of all that. So it supersedes that. I don't, and it has little, like, if you're talking about a certain moral theory that you want to put forward, it has to be based not on the social history of humanity and all this, or whatever, but
No, I didn't
on
say
coins.
that's, but that wasn't my argument, John, if you were listening. My argument says that a moral theory must be logically consistent, and it should ideally go some way towards explaining various elements of history and success or failures of societies in promoting general welfare. So it's not that they're proven by these things, but it should. So if you have a theory that says communism should be really beneficial to human life and really productive in its allocation of capital and labor, right? If you had a theory,
Right.
and then we know, based upon the horrors of the 20th century, that that's not the case, right? Then that would be something that would be a thumb in the eye of your moral theory, right? In the same way that if you said, well, I'm holding up my glasses, and if I let go, my theory is that they're going to float or rise up when they would just drop, right? So I'm not saying that you would prove a moral theory, and I think that's where we're misunderstanding each other about Dawkins and Harris, because they're saying, well, you've got these empirical facts, and this leads you to a moral theory, and whether that violates the is-ought dichotomy, I think it does, but that's perhaps a topic for another time. But I'm saying that a moral theory has to be rationally consistent and ideally should explain the general movements of history as to why is totalitarianism so destructive, and why would, say, free markets and small government be relatively more productive? Why would progress be better where there's free speech, and where there's no free speech, intellectual progress would tend to stagnate or decay? So we want logical consistency with our moral theories, and the reason I say reason and evidence is we have a lot of evidence about good and bad outcomes of moral theories, and we should be able to explain that using a moral theory as a whole. Not that it proves the moral theory, but it should explain it.
No, I mean, not for me. Communism failed because of economic reasons. Had very little to do with how many people it killed. I mean, that's bad too, but it failed because it was destined to fail economically. It's not going to work anywhere. So it's
okay. So the argument that I would make would be something like this. And I appreciate the conversation, I really do. So I would say something like property rights are universal, and I would make that case through UPB, which we can do very briefly if you like. But property rights are universal, and the reason why communism fails is it denies that property rights are universal. In other words, you end up with a very small number of people controlling everything in the country and denying property rights and self-ownership and owning the effects of your actions, which is the root of property, that because it claims something that is universal is treated as only reserved for a small number of elites. Now, that would be the moral reason. One of the practical reasons, which I think you and I would probably agree on, is that without a free market, you don't have price signals. And without price signals, you can't possibly have efficient allocation of, not even allocation, you can't have the efficient movement of labor and capital because all human desires are infinite and all resources are finite. You can't have a efficient allocation of resources without a price signal, because central planning doesn't have access to all of those price signals and isn't nimble, and it becomes political and corrupt and so on. So, sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, that's economic. It's going to fail because of certain reasons. But that's
no, but you're denying people property rights under communism. You're denying people self-ownership, owning the effects of their actions. And so because you advocate for and defend property rights for a small group of elites, which is the Politburo or the people at the top of the communist system, the people with the Dachauers on the Black Sea and so on, because you say a small number of people control most of the property, then you're saying some human beings have the right to property they didn't even earn, whereas other human beings don't have the right to property they did earn. That would be a logical inconsistency. Why would only some people have the right to property and not others? Whereas in UPB, the rights of property are established as universal principles, and therefore we would accept, or what UPB would say is, the more that you respect property rights, because that's logically consistent, the more that you respect property rights, the better your society would do. And of course, we notice that one of the things that birthed the Industrial Revolution was the end of serfdom and slavery to a large degree, and that gave people self-ownership. It gave people the ability to own the fundamental mean of production, which is your own mind and body, to own the effects of their actions, which is the property they've created, and to trade much more freely or with free will. And that's why we went from subsistence to the explosion of wealth in the agriculturally in the 18th century, industrially in the 19th century, and more technologically in the 20th century. So UPB would prove the universality of property rights, and then it would say the more that property rights are respected in general, the better outcomes society would be. Like if you are navigating around the world thinking it's flat, you're going to end up in the wrong place. If you understand that it's a sphere, you're going to end up in a better place. In other words, if you have an accurate representation of the way things are, then you're going to have better outcomes than if you don't. And so that would be, and again, I know I haven't proven anything with UPB, but that's why I was talking about both reason and evidence. UPB is an elegant way of proving that rape, theft, assault, and murder can never be moral, and it's moral to respect property and personhood. And the evidence, which you would say, is the more that society violates UPB, the worse its outcomes tend to be, if that makes sense.
No, as far as I can tell, UPB, whatever you're calling it UPB, but that's libertarian theory, whatever, about property rights, and it still explains, okay, economically, yeah, that could have led to wealth and being lifted out of serfdom and all this other stuff. Sure, yeah, but that still doesn't. There's nothing moral going on there. And more importantly, what is?
I'm sorry, hang on. Are you saying that the end of slavery was not moral? It was not. That slavery is as moral as not slavery.
Slavery was not slave. That's a whole different. You're talking about something moral there. You're saying
right. Do you believe that slavery is immoral?
Yeah, but that's the point. That's not something economic. That's something you have to make a moral decision about in order to end the practice first. So
sure.
That's not economic.
No, I get that. I get that. I understand that. But ending slavery does have economic effects, right? I mean, the moral theory is that slavery is evil, which it is. And then when we end slavery, generally we would say that the rational is the practical. It certainly is in science and math and engineering and so on. So with morals, I would say that if you have a correct or more valid or universal or rational moral theory, that the effects on society should be better. In the same way, like if you and I we want to sail from London to, or maybe not London, from Dover, let's say. We want to sail from Dover to go around the hook. So we want to sail from Dover to New York. And let's say, it's back in ye old days of sailing ships or whatever. And I think the world is flat and you think that the world is round. And I end up at the Cape of Good Hope because I'm just completely wrong. And you end up in New York. That would be evidence that the world is a sphere, not flat, because you ended up in the right place and I ended up in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't know what that has to do with slavery. But we're there. The point is it doesn't matter what the effects are or the material effects of something like a decision like that. The point is that you would decide that morally it's wrong. It doesn't matter what the effects downstream would be. If you have a system that tells you it's wrong, you have to stop doing it. So it's
okay. So hang on. So is slavery wrong because you believe it's wrong, or is slavery wrong for some objective reason?
Slavery because of some moral reason.
Your
wrong.
moral reason. Your moral reason.
A moral reason.
No, hang on. You said slavery is wrong. Why is slavery wrong?
Why is slavery wrong?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you from my personal point of view. I could tell you historically.
No. But you must have some belief that there's objective right and wrong. Would you agree with that?
I'm a deist, so I believe in the objectivity of morals.
Okay, fantastic. So you accept sorry to interrupt. You accept the objectivity of morals. So why is slavery wrong?
It's wrong because there are in my view, there are moral laws that are universal, that supersede the material, that we have to obey, or we
religious
should
laws.
guide ourselves by.
Sorry, would you say religious laws?
Yeah, there are laws. It's like, for me, it's like a logical law. Like we can't begin without these laws. That's what makes slavery wrong in the first place. Why England was the first to ban slavery. For them, it's a religious wrong, or was
Okay,
wrong
but
according to God.
sorry, I'm sorry, and I really apologize because I'm sorry if I'm being dense here or not following something that's obvious. But why is slavery wrong?
Why? Because we're not. It's for me. As a deist, it's something that a creator put as a law. Something is wrong.
Okay,
Anything that causes
so what argument would you have against other cultures wherein slavery is right?
that my views supersede theirs or whatever.
No, hang on. They have gods that tell them that slavery is a valid conquest of war, and there are still cultures in the world today who believe that. There are open air slave markets in the former remains of Libya after Clinton killed Gaddafi, to some degree, right? So if you have other religions that their God tells them that slavery is right, and your God tells you that slavery is wrong, how do you convince them?
How do you convince them?
Yeah, like why are they wrong if their God tells them slavery is right and your God tells you that slavery is wrong?
Well, you can't. That's what a lot of wars throughout human history have started over, was the ideas between different religions and all that. But I mean, mostly it doesn't work. Mostly you have to take it over by force. But I'm not.
Okay, but if there was a way, I'm so sorry. I apologize, John. I rudely interrupt you again. I apologize. Sorry. Please finish your point.
No, I'm not an interventionist. First of all, like I don't believe in intervention. So if a country is practicing slavery or communism or something else, usually it will fall apart on its own because these things are not. First of all, they don't work. I mean, they can work so far economically, but later, like they'll fall apart. There's better systems that'll work. And but second, I'm not an interventionist. Like just as a principle, like I'm with Thomas Jefferson in that way. I don't believe in intervention for different countries. I think that the whole, what the USA being the world police and all that should never have happened.
I would think it's fairly safe to say that the founding fathers were quite interventionist when it came to America, right? I mean, they fought a war to liberate themselves from the British.
Yeah, but to establish a new country, yes, they conquered or whatever. They came here and conquered, yes.
Right.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Would it be beneficial, would you say, for the world if there was a way to disprove false moral arguments like slavery is good without reference or requirement for religious faith?
You have to. I mean, what are you basing it on? That's
No,
the thing.
I'm asking you whether it would be beneficial.
Probably not. Because, like you said,
hang on. You said that the only way to change people's minds, if it's faith-based, is through violence. Now, if you could reason with people, I'm not saying you wouldn't reason with everyone because a lot of people reject reason and so on, but would it be beneficial to have a rational proof of secular ethics rather than having to rely either on violence or watching horrors around the world with no capacity to debate?
I said it usually ends that way. The history of humanity has taught us that. So it's not, you could debate all day and make philosophical theories about why we should adhere to this or that these moral rule. But in the end, another country's not going to listen to rationality. I mean, they'd have to have the same exact principles that you do.
So you're saying that there's no possibility of reasoning irrational people into being more rational or being better?
I don't know, you could try.
But isn't that your job?
Yeah.
Why would you have a job in something that you say is impossible?
Yeah, my job is in a certain context. I'm not in wherever, some country where they practice cannibalism as a rite of passage, and I'm trying to teach them.
So some people can be reached through reason.
The context here is really important.
No, but you're saying some people can be reached through reason, because otherwise your job would be fraudulent, right?
Yeah, but I'm teaching in a certain tradition.
I understand that. I'm aware of that. You have to speak the same language. You have a lot of cultural touch points, and whether you need the whole Greco-Roman, whatever, Enlightenment tradition, I get all of that. But some people can be reached through reason. And some very irrational people can be reached through reason. Otherwise, let's say we have a little bit more rationality in the West than some other cultures. Well, we didn't start out that way, right? I mean, the British people, which are, there's a certain amount of base Anglo-Saxon rationality that we can look at. And, but when the Romans found them, they were, painted blue and worshipping rocks and beating each other on the heads with said rocks as often as possible. So we can emerge to reason from a state of pre-reason. Otherwise, reason wouldn't exist in humanity, right?
Sure. But it doesn't, that's the whole, they were subjugated by force too. So that's another example of what happened to, the, Germanic people, the Gaelics and all that. So they had to be, Rome took them over. That's current day example would be the Muslim countries. They're still, everything that's going on now, you don't reason with these people. Their faith is whatever. You can call it faith, but I don't know how, I guess a lot of them take their faith seriously. So it's like war of faiths. It's always been that way. And you're not going to, you could try to present something, but they're not going to listen to that. They're going to tell you Allah is God, and they'll cut off your head. So,
well, I wouldn't necessarily put all Muslims into that category, but okay. So if we have a rational proof of secular ethics, it at least puts forward the possibility of convincing people who are open to reason. Whereas if we don't have a rational proof of secular ethics, we have no chance of reaching anyone because it's just faith versus faith, right?
I don't know. There's an entire history of philosophical moral reasoning. So that's not going to stop anybody. I mean, it's available for, that's not going to really, I don't know what the point is of, and what again, like, what is it that your system is based on?
Well, okay. I can run you through the proof of, say, don't steal.
No. What is the first?
No, hang on.
principle?
No, I'll run you through the proof of don't steal, and then we can.
I know. I heard the proof. I know the proof.
Okay, great. Then just for the audience's sake, because not everyone is up to speed on our conversation, what is my proof for don't steal?
It's the contradiction. Nobody can steal and be stolen from. Is that it?
I'm sorry, that's terrible teaching. If you could just take another run at it, teach it so people can understand it.
It was something like nobody can want to steal and be stolen from. And that can't be applied universally.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you're asking me or telling me. Do you not know the proof?
I think that was the proof. I can't remember 100%, but was that it?
Well, it's not a question. Okay, I'll do it. So the proof against stealing is either universally preferable behavior or not stealing is universally preferable behavior. Now, we'll get to the antecedents or the background to that in just a second, but let's just look at the logical consistency of these questions. So if I were to put forward the moral proposition that stealing, is universally preferable behavior, what happens? Well, the problem is, of course, that if I say stealing is universally preferable behavior, then everyone must want to steal and be stolen from at the same time. However, stealing is the unwanted transfer of property. So if I want to have my property taken from me, stealing doesn't exist. The example I give is if you put some old couch from your university days, you put some old couch out on the sidewalk with a big sign that says, "Take me," and then your video camera catches someone picking that couch up, throwing it in their pickup and driving off, and you call the cops, right? And you say, "Hey man, Bob stole my couch." And he's like, "Oh, that's terrible. I'm going to come over." And he comes over and he says, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, I put the couch out on the sidewalk and I put a sign that said, 'Take me,' and then Bob took my couch." I mean, you're probably going to get charged for wasting the police's time because he said, "Look, if you put your couch out there and you say, 'Take me,' he can't steal it from you, bro, because you're giving it away." You're giving it away. It's like samples. You go to farmers markets, have these little samples of cookies and brownies and stuff like that. And if you can't be arrested for, if it says samples and you have a little bite, maybe you take the whole plate, but you can't be arrested, right? So if you want someone to take your property, it's not stealing. In other words, stealing is asymmetric, right? If Bob is stealing from Doug, it's only stealing if Doug doesn't want him to take it. So theft can never be universally preferable behavior, because theft is, if stealing is UPB, stealing ceases to exist as a category. It's a self-detonating argument, and therefore stealing can never be universally preferable behavior. Respecting property rights, i.e. not stealing, can be achieved by everyone at all times, and therefore it doesn't self-contradict to say respecting property rights is UPB. There's no contradiction involved in that. Now, that doesn't mean that people won't steal just because the theory says that it's logically consistent. But the same applies, of course, to rape. Rape can never be universally preferable behavior because rape is unwanted sexual contact. So it would be crazy to say rape is universally preferable behavior. Well, not crazy, it'd be wrong. Because it would be to say everyone must want to rape and be raped at the same time. But there's no such thing as wanting to be raped, because raped is unwanted sexual contact. The same thing would be true of assault. The same thing would be true of murder, and so on. So UPB shows that there are immediate and unresolvable logical contradictions in saying that rape, theft, assault, and murder can be universally preferable behavior, and therefore any moral claim that says any of that can be dismissed as immediately self-contradictory. It does do the slight bonus of also pointing out that since stealing is the opposite of virtue, since stealing is immoral, stealing is a UPB violation, as I call it, then societies based more on stealing would also have more negative outcomes as a whole, because we would say that the reason equals virtue equals happiness, or the rational is the practical. And if you have a scientific theory that contradicts itself, we would not expect anything productive really to come out of that scientific theory except purely by accident. And only if you didn't follow it, since matter and behavior don't contradict themselves. Any scientific theory that contradicts itself will fail in its description of the behavior of matter and energy. And so rape, theft, assault, and murder being the basis, and we can go into things like self-defense, we can go into things like contract law and fraud and things like that. But, let's just deal with the basics because they're the ones most violated: rape, theft, assault, and murder. So societies that promote these things would do worse than societies that go further towards respecting these things. And, the final example would be looking at the differences between the French Revolution and the American Revolution. The American Revolution, they were originally going to have life, liberty, and property in the sort of founding documents, but they couldn't put in property because of the slave owners, which was a violation of thou shalt not steal. Literally owning another human being is stealing their self-ownership. And so they were closer in UPB compliance, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and so on. The founding documents of America were way closer to UPB than the French Revolution. The French Revolution was an literally ungodly, evil, murdering nuns and slaughtering people and mass starvation and inflation and the destruction of all savings. And communism, of course, is a violation of UPB. Fascism is a violation of UPB. Totalitarianism as a whole is a violation of UPB. And so UPB says bans on rape, theft, assault, and murder universally are logically valid, and societies that have logical contradictions in their enactment of morality are not going to do well, in the same way that if you have logical contradictions in how you build your bridge, it's probably not going to stay up, if that makes sense. So, sorry, that's a very brief example, but that's the general UPB approach.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, you're mixing libertarian theory with and adding a contradiction where you can't steal and not steal at the same time. Which is
okay, but just saying that hang on, bro, come on, like that's, you're being lazy. I would be perfectly frank with you. So just saying, well, it's libertarian and it seems like there's a contradiction.
But
how about instead of describing things, you actually provide an argument? It's getting kind of tiresome to just have you put things down without actually analyzing the content of what's being put forward. I can't imagine this is what you teach your students, is just to say, well, just say that the argument is libertarian and has contradictions. You don't have to prove anything.
But it is. I mean, you're just lifting libertarian theory and then
you're
adding...
not disproving.
a contradiction.
You've got to show me the contradictions. Don't just say it's libertarian. That doesn't answer anything. Putting a label on it doesn't disprove anything.
I thought you had like a little bit more than just like, property rights and stealing. You can't steal and not steal. Want to steal at the same time, which is okay. I know that's a a contradiction. What makes
Fantastic.
that wrong?
Okay, so it is logically impossible to say stealing is universally preferable behavior, right?
If you want to make you put the assertion logically, stealing is universally preferable. Then you say you can also not want to be stolen from, blah blah blah. I get it. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So rape, theft, assault, and murder have all been proven as logically self-contradictory under the theory of UPB.
You change the variables in all these contradictions. What I'm asking is what's the first principle that makes these things wrong in the first place? Aside from
help me understand what you mean by first principle. That's a bit of, it's a technical term, but for the audience's sake, it might be a little confusing.
It's not technical. It's really simple. You're talking about these things as contradictions, and that makes them. How does a contradiction make something wrong? Okay, it's a contradiction. That doesn't make it wrong.
No. Now your prejudice is showing. You said earlier, brother, we got to deal with reason and evidence, and now you're saying, well, it's contradictory. How does that make it wrong?
Reason led you to say, okay, I'm going to put this variable and this variable here, and then make a contradiction between them. How does that make it morally wrong?
Okay, what is it contradictory? So if somebody proposes a moral theory that requires both a simultaneous affirmation and denial of property rights, that's a contradiction, and we should reject that moral theory, which means we reject fascism, we reject communism, we reject totalitarianism. In fact, we reject statism as a whole, which is where the anarcho-capitalism comes in from. We reject spanking, we reject circumcision, we reject, rape. So the fact that we have a way to say, if you have a moral system that self-contradicts, it's invalid. Now, does that mean magically everybody suddenly becomes rational? Well, no, of course not. But it is a way of disproving other people's moral assertions without requiring them to believe in the same God you do.
Yeah, you're talking about these systems that will fail for material reasons, not because of a metaphysical one. Why is it wrong in the first place?
Sorry, why is it what?
What makes it wrong? What makes stealing?
Are you saying that something
wrong?
that is self-contradictory is not incorrect?
That doesn't make it wrong.
Hang on. No. You're using the word wrong here in morally wrong. I'm not doing that. Hang on. Is something that is self-contradictory incorrect?
That's not a moral theory.
No. Is it incorrect? Is it incorrect? Forget the morality. Is something that is something that is self-contradictory incorrect?
Incorrect logically, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to apply something,
great. So the proposition that stealing is morally right, or I know that's begging the question. So the proposition that stealing is universally preferable behavior is incorrect. So that's good, right? We've proven that stealing is incorrect. Any theory that promotes stealing as a moral absolute is incorrect, or stealing as universally preferable behavior, that's incorrect. Well, that's pretty good, right?
No, you've only proven that it can't be preferable to do and to have done to you, like
right.
In a logical.
The proposition that theft is universally preferable behavior is incorrect.
You're not telling me why I should not steal in the first place, other than I should not want to be stolen from at the same time.
No. So UPB deals with moral theories. UPB is not magic mind control for individuals because, of course, no such thing exists, right? So science says if your theory self-contradicts, it is invalid, right? If your theory requires that a shape be both a circle and a square at the same time, it is incorrect, right? Now, it doesn't magically program everyone to become a scientist. It just says that if you're going to put forward a claim about the behavior of matter and energy in the universe, it cannot be self-contradictory because matter and energy do not self-contradict.
Yeah, that's
So,
all.
so
You're
that's
talking
all I'm
about
saying.
again. You're talking about like a science. Some things in the realm of logic where we can't have the square circle. Okay,
Yep.
how does that give me any moral input? That doesn't give me any moral input. You're
No,
just
wait, well, hang
changing
on. No, we
variables.
just said, I mean, and you agreed, if I understand this correctly, we agreed that stealing cannot be universally preferable behavior, and only the respect for property rights can be universally preferable behavior. Now, again, that doesn't program anyone to stop being a thief, but it means that if somebody puts forward a moral theory which violates UPB, that moral theory is invalid. In other words, if somebody puts forward a theory that says stealing is sometimes good, stealing is sometimes valid, stealing, and then it's incorrect, because stealing cannot be universally preferable behavior, and you cannot propose different rules for the same class of entities. What you said earlier, morality is everywhere that human beings are. So you can't just say, a lizard is cold-blooded, but I'm going to throw in a dolphin as well. It's like, but a dolphin is warm-blooded. No, but, right, so you can't just create a category called humanity, then just apply opposite moral rules. Like, well, if your
Yeah,
name is Bob, you can kill, and it's not logically contradictory, or you can promote murder as universally preferable behavior, but Bob can't, right? Because you have to have the same rational categories for human beings as a whole. So the proof is, as we stated, that rape, theft, assault, and murder can never be universally preferable behavior. And as far as what people do with that, I don't know. I mean, the important thing is to promote the argument so that people learn to analyze and critically oppose false moral theories that involve self-contradictions. So to take on something like Richard Dawkins or Samuel Harris or something like that, right? So if they accept the existence, say, of a state, then they, which they do, and they're both statists as far as I know, then they're creating opposite moral categories. They're saying, well, there's some people who can initiate the use of force to transfer property. There are some people who can start wars. There are some people who can draft people to go fight in Ukraine or Russia or wherever. And there are other people who can't do that. Well, that's a categorical error. You can't say human beings have opposite moral properties, because human beings are one category and they're the only moral category that exists in the world. There isn't morality among ants. And so the universality of UPB and the fact that UPB violations are immediately self-contradictory is the basis for communicating morals to people who don't share your prior assumptions. In other words, if you believe in the 10 Commandments, then you can talk to other people who already believe in the 10 Commandments. If they don't, if they have an entirely different kind of God, right? If they have Woden or Loki or, whatever, right? It's 10,000 different gods you can choose from. You have no way to communicate them. If you have a common language of reason and evidence, you can at least talk to people about morals who don't share your metaphysical beliefs about deism or the moral order of the universe put forward by a god. And so this is why I say a rational proof of secular ethics. It's a way of talking about morality that doesn't require the guns of the government, and it does not require the faith of a god. It is reason and evidence. And yes, there will be countless people out there who will reject reason and evidence, and you can't convince them at all. But that's fine. I mean, you still have to put forward, as you do, right? You know that there's billions of people out in the world who aren't going to accept reason and evidence, but you continue to promote reason and evidence, much to your credit, as do I, as, maybe we do it in different ways, and that's part of the whole free speech thing, which is wonderful. But we do have to have a way of talking to people who don't agree with us, particularly in the realm of ethics, which tends to be the most volatile and bloody aspect of human interactions. And if we have a way of, with reason, with evidence, talking about ethics, then we don't hit this impasse of faith, which requires violence, as we've seen from various religious takeovers, both from Christianity and Islam and other religions. We have a way of talking about morals that doesn't require faith, because if it does require faith, it's almost inevitably going to be conquer or be conquered. And if we can avoid that, boy, so much the better. Sorry for the long speech. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a whole lot of scalloping. I don't even know. We're going for what it's based on, and no one's going to accept a contradiction, because it's whatever you want to put these variables in any context doesn't prove anything morally, or to say that another system would have failed if they had only obeyed this non-contradictions thing. They could have you could give any other reason for why they would have failed, like communism. When it's all economics and social mores and all this other stuff that made it fail. I don't need to know that I can't prefer to steal and want to be stolen from. It doesn't. A society is going to base themselves on stealing is going to fall apart really quickly. So it's not. That doesn't, and it doesn't prove anything morally. It's like, of course, it's going to fall apart. For good
I'm
material
sorry,
reasons, it's going to
hang
fall
on,
apart.
do you not think that stealing is in the realm of morality?
Yeah, what the onus is on you to prove why it's wrong. That's what morality is.
No, I did.
No,
I said that any theory that says that stealing is universally preferable behavior is incorrect. And
Yeah,
you have
but
accepted
what
that. You've
makes it
accepted that proof because it is. It is incorrect.
incorrect, but not. I'm not. No, in your system, it makes no sense why it's incorrect, other than you can't
No.
want to
Logic,
be
bro,
stolen.
come on. Logic is not my system. A logical contradiction isn't, I mean, you could say Aristotle, 3 laws of logic from there on, but it's not my system. It's a logical contradiction to say that stealing is universally preferable behavior. You accept that, I accept that, and that's just a basic reality. So if somebody proposes a system that promotes stealing in any form or context, you can say, no, stealing cannot be universally preferable behavior. Neither can rape, theft, assault, and murder. That's why, and they're incorrect. Any theory that promotes a self-contradiction is an incorrect theory.
But you still haven't proven why they're wrong. All you've proven is that.
No, it's proven that they are wrong.
You're not getting this.
I've proven that they are wrong, and you've accepted that. So I don't know what you're doing here. You're conflating wrong morally with wrong logically.
I can put any variable in those.
Agreed. Absolutely. Everything that is self-contradictory is incorrect. Yes, I agree.
That doesn't make anything morally wrong or right. I could just say any variable, and I could say, well, that's moral because of the contradiction.
Huh?
No, I haven't proven
but that's why I asked you why stealing a moral subject. Stealing is a moral subject because it's only specific to human beings, that it only involves property rights. We don't look at animals as stealing from each other. It's a human concept. It's a human concept based on morality. And so if I've disproven a moral theory, then that is a moral argument, and that disproves, if the subject is moral, I mean, you agree that rape with regards to human beings, is that a moral issue?
Yeah, you've chosen like these 3 issues, which are
actually it's 4: rape, theft, assault, and murder. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you could put any variable there and you could put a self-contradiction and then make a claim about it being moral. You haven't proven anything. I haven't proven.
I'm sorry, but
it's wrong.
Okay, so can stealing ever be universally preferable behavior? Yes or no?
Ever be universally preferable?
I thought we'd already gone through this, but we can do it again. Can stealing ever be logically, forget the morals, can stealing ever be universally preferable behavior?
Anything is possible logically, so I don't know what you're asking me. Like, in a logical sense, yes. You could have a universal preference for stealing.
Okay, so I can run through the proof again because you'd already accepted that it couldn't be. I can run through the proof again if you'd like.
Yeah, all you're doing is putting P and not P. That doesn't prove anything.
So logical inconsistency has no bearing on proof. So if you have a student who hands in a paper that's logically contradictory, you just mark them with an A.
No, what I'm saying is...
Oh, good. Okay, so logical inconsistency is a mark of error, and that's why you mark people. I'll give you another example. You came in hot on my show live, which I appreciate. I'm glad you're here. I really am. You came in hot on my show telling me that I was wrong, that I was bad at arguing, that I was bad at formulating logic, that I got everything wrong, and I wasn't a philosopher, and I was wrong.
You are.
Right, I get all of that. So you are judging me according to a standard called philosophy and finding me wanting, not just according to your opinion, not just according to your subjective perspective, but according to absolute universal rules. I was deficient and wrong and bad, right? It's stupid. It's wrong. You're doing the wrong thing, right? So you come in hot with moral judgments. And then when I prove something morally, you say, well, but morals don't prove anything and logical contradictions don't prove anything. While you came in hot I'm going to call you a real hypocrite here, bro. You came in hot saying, Steph, you are acting illogically. You are acting irrationality. You're promoting things that are wrong and bad. And it's wrong and bad and blah, blah, blah. And now that I've proven something morally, you say, well, but contradictions don't mean anything. That doesn't prove anything morally. But if you don't believe in morals, how dare you come in and call me wrong and bad for what I'm doing?
Because that doesn't, again, you haven't even made a big an actual good argument. You just put two variables and said P and not P.
I've put a great argument together that you agreed with, that stealing can never be universally preferable behavior because it involves immediate self-contradiction.
It can't be universally preferable because no society would be able to form.
No,
it has nothing
it
to
is
do with
logical.
a
It
contradiction.
is not based upon evidence. Stealing cannot be universally preferable behavior because you cannot want to steal and be stolen from. Because if you want to be stolen from, the concept of stealing immediately vanishes. So stealing can never be universally preferable behavior. Rape can never be universally preferable behavior. Assault and murder can never be universally preferable behavior because if you want to be raped, you're not being raped. Maybe you're in some kinky role play, I don't know, 50 Shades of Grey, something like that, right? So I'm sorry, and I'll move on to another caller because I think we've exhausted the topic and you can mull it over. You can continue to call me an
I don't
idiot.
have to
That's
mull it
totally
over.
up to you. But I will just say that
I
don't believe that you're arguing in good faith because you already agreed that these things couldn't be logically contradictory. And the theory that stealing can be universally preferable behavior, you already accepted that it was self-contradictory, and then you say, well, but contradictions don't matter. But then you came in hot at the beginning of me saying that I was contradicting and doing bad things and blah, blah, blah. Anyway. All right, let us take a call. I appreciate everyone's patience. I'm glad that fellow called in. I was actually looking forward to it, and I really, really enjoyed the conflict. It was a fight. I was hoping it would be a bit more civil, but that's all right. Team Human, what is on your mind, my friend? You will need to unmute. All right. Maybe people have been stunned by the joyful combat of John and myself. I give you once or twice, otherwise we can go to someone else. Team Human, he has unteamed. All right. D. Not D's nuts, but something else completely. D, what is on your mind? Don't forget to unmute.
Hello, Stefan.
How you doing?
Good. So, I'm just a touch of background. I'm 54, person of faith, and I've listened to you quite a bit over the years, and I decided to start listening to your book, Preferable Behavior.
Universally preferable behavior. Sorry,
Yeah.
but in case people look for it, but go ahead.
Yes, and like I said, I'm listening to it, and it comes at you really fast out of the gate. You're fast and furious, and I
Well, sorry,
appreciate.
just everyone, I'm sorry to interrupt, just so everyone knows, it doesn't, I mean, at the very beginning of the book, I say, you have every reason to have no belief that I've solved the age-old problem of philosophy called secular ethics. I'm an IT guy, I have a graduate degree in history of philosophy, but it is the holy grail of philosophy, so the idea that I've solved it is something that you should not believe at all, because it's such a ridiculous claim. So I sort of put that at the beginning of the book, but I'm sorry, Dee, go ahead.
Yeah, and so the way I look at this is, personally, is there's a saying. It says you can, I like, or I can't talk to the people I pray with, and I can't pray with the people I talk to. And so, like I said, as a person of faith, like these kinds of discussions don't come up. It's, we just have so much in common, and we just talk about our own issues within. And so that's why I find listening to you interesting. But what's happened at the beginning of the book is you offer a pretty strong critique of scripture. I don't know if you would say it that way.
I wouldn't say it that way now, and I have, and there's no reason why you would know this, but I have put out copious and heartfelt apologies to Christians for the harshness of my language in the past, and so I do apologize for that again. It was very harsh and wrong, and there's a bunch of reasons for it, that none of which are excuses. So I have apologized. I'm happy to do it again because I'm very sorry about the way that I spoke of Christianity in the past. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not asking for apology. I just trying to as I read the book more, and I think I'm going to have to get a paper copy because I'm going to have to take notes because it's a very rigorous book so far. But anyway, I just wonder if you could answer a question: how do I engage with this in a productive way? I mean, if I'm a person that has lived by faith for 54 years, gone through graduate school and had to kind of hold my nose while I listen to professors and but also want to get something out of them. There were some I got more out of it, some I just couldn't, and and I would drop that, or just take what I could from it. And are we just mutually exclusive thinkers? A person of faith and a person of reason. Is there where would you say is the point of even engaging?
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm not sure what your relationship is with science, because people in faith, in the Christian faith, have a wide spectrum of their relationship to science. Do you believe, as some Christians do, and many Christians do you believe that science is the examination of the consistency and rationality of God's work?
Yes, and I appreciate science as a way to describe and categorize and explore the natural world, and I find a lot of beauty in that. Um, when as science as a field, because it's filled with humans, there's reason to be skeptical of especially things that come out of the humanities and the academic
No,
journals.
I'm just talking about pure science, like the physical sciences and so on.
I I have appreciation for pure science, but I see it as a way to describe creation.
Right. So when we examine the universe, if you accept that God created the universe, we wouldn't say, I think, and please, I'm no theologian, so please forgive me and be patient if I go astray. But God has given us reliable senses, and God has given us reason. And God has given a rational and structured universe. So we have a rational and structured universe accurately transmitted to our brain through the evidence of our senses, and our brain almost naturally categorizes things into universal concepts. Do we sort of agree more or less on that?
Yes.
So the
And
examination of the natural world would not be in opposition to a belief in God, but rather would be saying, well, God gave us a rational universe, gave us accurate senses, and gave us the innate ability to conceptualize, and gives us a great deal of fluidity and faculty and reasoning, which is shared by no other animals. And therefore, it cannot be in opposition to God to examine the nature of the universe. Is that something we can agree on?
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So then I would say, how much more amazing and beautiful and wonderful would it be to examine the nature of morality and find that the morality that God commands is also rational and empirical? Because God gives us a moral sense, God gives us reason, God gives us a structured universe transmitted accurately through the evidence of the senses. And so if the examination of God's rational universe is a plus and not a disrespect to God, to me, it's even more important, since the fundamental moral mission of mankind is to be good, not to be made comfortable by science. But I would say that wouldn't it be also very powerful if thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, and the other moral commandments, wouldn't it be really cool if they were even more rational than the universe? That God gives us reason and a moral instinct, and that to discover or to delineate rape, theft, assault, and murder as evil, which would be all over the place in the Bible, that it would be very powerful and good to realize that God's moral commandments don't need to just be taken on faith, but can be proven rationally, and thus transmitted to people who don't believe in the same religion, which was sort of my point with the professor earlier with John, is that, look, if we can come up with a language that is rational to describe ethics, we can convince people who don't share our prior beliefs. Not everyone, but it's our best chance to spread virtue without the violence that Professor John. I think of Professor Longhair, the jazz musician or the blues musician. But so I don't, for me, I would say that if UPB is valid, and it is, I mean, it's been attacked from every which way but loose, and everyone has to accept that rape, theft, assault, and murder can never be universally preferable behavior for the reasons I went through with Professor John. I'm just not using his last name, but so if God's commandments are as rational as God's universe, isn't that a good thing? That God gave us the reason to understand his moral arguments in the same way he gave us the reason to understand the rationality and beauty of his universe.
Yes, as a matter of fact, when I have 3 adult children now, when they were teenagers, I didn't start off with, when it came to issues of dating and sex and drugs and, basic moral, development as a kid, I approached it from a practical point of view. If I'm talking to my 15-year-old son about, not fornicating with his daughter, I didn't say God's gonna,
fornicating with his.
With his girlfriend.
Okay, sorry. I know that's what you meant. I just didn't want to let it pass. But sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for that. But I would approach it like, look, you don't want an unexpected pregnancy. You don't want to get an STD. You don't want to, get into any kind of practical trouble with this. But in the back of my head, I'm worried about my son spiritually, who he's going to be as he grows older, and not just in this life, but in the next life. I think that this life is a ramp into the next world, and so I guess I would put an extra level of importance on being moral, not just to make this world a better place, but to set yourself up for a better afterlife. And so I had that in the back of my head, but I didn't think it was, I had to explain myself why I had certain expectations for how they behaved. Don't steal, don't text and drive, or it, whatever. And so I think I was a practical parent that way. And if there were moments that I could have a more deeper, more spiritual discussion with them about why we don't want to be promiscuous, and why it's better to wait for marriage and all of that, I appreciated those kinds of conversations. But I had to kind of meet them where they were and have them understand, there's consequences today. Don't, and I'm not, if you get your girlfriend pregnant, there's consequences today if you steal, and so yeah, I appreciate using reason to teach morality. I just think that when you only use reason, you aren't necessarily understanding who we are as humans. If we're children of God and we have an afterlife, and I happen to be a person who believes that we've always existed, we existed before this life, we chose to come to this world, that we're, it's not sufficient, or it's necessary to be moral, but it's not sufficient to the objectives of God for us in the next life.
Yes, it is not works alone that will save you, but faith.
Yes, and we're becoming. I believe we have the potential to become more than what we can see with our limited, intellect and our limited vision and imagination right now. I think we're children of God, and therefore we can become much more like Him than we imagine. And I believe that He operates by faith, and I believe that that's a superior way to operate. You could use reason, but also use reason under you know, the perspective of faith.
Yeah, and I think I would. I mean, I'm sure you did a wonderful job with your children. This is just a minor tweak, which may not apply to you or not. But I think with regards to promiscuity, what I would say would be that promiscuity is bad because it almost always involves falsehood. In other words, you have to pretend to like the person more than you do in order to get that person to sleep with you, particularly male to female, because women are much more vulnerable when it comes to sexual matters. They're kind of half pinned down and they risk more STDs, they risk pregnancy and so on, or stalkers, which are more common, I think, from males to females than the other way around. And so a lot of times the reason why promiscuity would be bad is because you have to pretend to like the person, you have to lie to the person in general. Like no real woman is going to sleep with you if you say, well, I don't really like you, but I find you sexy and I'm willing to, dump my seed in you and move on just because you'd be a sort of subservient whole. Women wouldn't really, most women, it would take a really messed up woman to sleep with you if you were honest about not liking the person. And promiscuity is when you use somebody as an object by lying to them. You use them as a masturbatory device by lying to them, and that cheapens yourself. It cheapens your commitment to truth and honor, and it makes you dislike yourself because you become a lying manipulator who hurts people, and that is not going to add to your self-respect. And you then lose out on the great treasure of love, which you only get when you act in a reasonably moral manner. So, there's lots of sort of arguments for it, but I think that there's and there are the practical consequences, like the more people, particularly for women, the more men that you sleep with, the less likely you are to pair bond in a marriage, the more likely you are to get divorced and so on. So I think that with regards to Christian virtues, there's such a wide overlap that philosophy can support that obviously, literally preaching to the choir isn't going to change much, although it may help reinforce people's virtues to hear rational arguments for them, but it does allow you to make the case for people who don't already share the faith. And we do need a way to find people, particularly with sort of increased multiculturalism and so on, we do need a way to reach people through reason because we share fewer faith-based values in common with our neighbors these days. And if we can't unite by philosophy, it just gets really bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, don't you think though that we've had a great example in Charlie Kirk of someone who can reason but also wears his faith on his sleeve? And I wouldn't say he's primarily proselytizing in his work, but he was. It. He probably brought a lot of people to church, and helped convert a lot of people and to see the wisdom and beauty of Christianity, eh, but he was a guy who would reason with people and make a reasoned case, why war is bad, or mutilating your children and leading them down these paths that are so destructive in the culture wars these days. And so I don't I wouldn't lean only on reason. And I'll say this, and I don't mean this in a like in an insulting way at all. I don't your your book, I don't think it's available or accessible to most people. I think you have to have a fairly high IQ to take it all in and process it. And half of us are below 100 IQ. And I think faith because we're children of God, and because there is this behavior that humans have. I think it's almost self-evident that humans are going to believe in some higher power, and they may put their faith in the wrong thing a lot of times, and they may put their faith in a sun god or Allah or Buddha or whatever, and it's if there's goodness there, they'll get some of it, but to the degree that it's corrupted, it won't do well for them. But I think if you have the correct understanding of who God is, I think, and can teach that, I think it's ultimately going to be more effective than, with all due respect, a philosophy book. And like, do you imagine that maybe your books or someone like you that works like you and thinks the way you do you imagine that they would ever be more effective than Christ was? 2,000 years from now, do you imagine there will be some, you know, landmark book that changed human morality?
I mean, obviously, I'm not going to put myself in the categorization of any divinity. So, obviously, no. But I will say this, though. Christianity, there are a lot of Christian organizations and religions and charity groups that are taking a lot of government money to fund the settlement of migrants from the other side of the world into, say, America. And they do that based upon a belief that all human beings basically have the same soul and, we're sort of all interchangeable at that sort of deep level. And, the jury is out on how that's going to go. I've certainly put forward my arguments. And if it doesn't go well, then that will have been a fairly negative thing on the part of Christianity, if it doesn't go well. And again, I've sort of put my arguments forward in the past, so I think we can accept that. Faith has been tried for hundreds of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and we still do have war and slavery. Now, of course, the Christians would say, and I understand the argument that, Satan runs the world, it's a veil of tears, human beings succumb to temptation and so on. And I don't think it's wrong for me to say, first of all, I've done a lot of good in what I do. I've had close to 1 billion views and downloads. I've back of the napkin calculation, my show and your support and all of this wonderful stuff has prevented 1.5 billion assaults upon children. And I know that I've had, we can do back of the calculations. I had one tweet that produced about 60,000 babies. It's my sort of famous Taylor Swift tweet, which even it got me banned is well worth it. But everything's been tried except philosophy. Everything has been tried except philosophy. Just about every form of government, just about every form of religion has been tried. And we are still, as a world, stagger from crisis to crisis and disaster to disaster. I mean, the 20th century, the formation of central banking, World War I, hyperinflation in the early 1920s, followed by a stock market boom and then a crash and then a 14-year Great Depression, followed by the Second World War, followed very quickly by the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Iraq War I, the Iraq War II, Afghanistan, what's been going on with Russia and Ukraine, and national debts, unfunded liabilities. Society is this briefly emerging light that is thunderclapped into non-existence by what feel like inevitable circumstances, and everything that has been tried has been based on something that is not rational. Whether it's political power, whether it's religious faith, whether it's collectivism or consequentialism or utilitarianism or pragmatism or you name it, everything has been tried except a dedication and proof of ethics through reason. And so if you're saying, well, we just kind of have to stagger on with the way things have gone, I don't agree. I do not accept it. I am putting myself all in for reason because human beings are innately rational. That's how we survive. It's how we flourish. People will fight like hell against reason. Some people will accept it. Some people will spread it. Reason does not mean the exclusion of Christianity in the conversation because Christianity is the closest religion to UPB that exists. And this is part of absolutely what I love about Christianity. But I refuse to accept that we just have to keep staggering along as civilizations rise and fall, as unfunded liabilities eat the young, as various social hysterias from COVID to the satanic panic to endless fantasies of racism and all of this go storming across the landscape and good men like Charlie Kirk get gunned down in front of his family. I refuse to accept that this is the best we can do. And if you want to break a cycle of history, you have to do something that's never been done before. And I have, for various reasons, been given the gifts I've been given. I've been given the amazing platform that we utilize. I have been given a lot of wonderful things to be able to spread philosophy in a way that's never occurred before. I don't think you need to be high IQ to see an obvious contradiction. I explained UPB to my daughter when she was 3 years old, and she got it, and it makes sense. So I don't think it's necessary. And so I am all in on philosophy. It is the one thing that hasn't been tried, and more of the same is going to produce more of the same. So I really appreciate that. I want to get to somebody else who wanted to come in. Thomas, you wanted to join us, and I think you're the last caller tonight. And again, I really appreciate everyone. Don't forget to subscribe for all of these lovely goodies. Thomas, if you want to unmute, I'm all ears.
Hi, hola, Stefan.
Hola.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. I have a question about ostracism. I want to know, where does it finally lead to? Because I can imagine this scenario where two populations are perfectly separated from each other, and then what? They are still the same country. What happens after that? Is it a peaceful national divorce, or what is it? What is it?
Well, it's never really been tried in this kind of way. So I look at the left and I look at why people believe things that are obviously false. And again, there are false things on the right, but the left has the ascendancy of power these days. So why do people believe things that are false when they're on the left? I mean, something that's obvious, like the Fine People hoax, where you can just get the video beamed to your phone and watch it for about 20 seconds and you realize that it's false. So why do people believe things that are false? Well, they believe things that are false because they'll be ostracized if they don't. And I've had enough conversations with people who are, quote, normies, that whenever you come across, well, this thing about Trump is false, and this thing that Comey said was not true, and the Russia collusion conspiracy theory is a hoax, and none of the climate models have been effective, and they get tense, really tense and upset. Why do they get tense and upset? Well, it's not because the truth fundamentally bothers them. It's because if they accept what I'm saying, and then they talk about it with their friends will dump them. And we saw this, of course, happen really viciously over COVID and the vaccine and so on. So ostracism is already at play. Ostracism is already at work. I mean, at a very formal level, you are ostracized from society if you disobey the state. You are ostracized from university if you don't agree with your professors. I mean, there's a whole bunch of mess that goes on. And I saw this study recently. Half of Canadian students in universities have to hide their true beliefs because there's no place for diversity in universities. It's not valued at all. You can be any shape, color, size you want as long as you're a hard leftist. That's called diversity, which is ridiculous, right? And diversity of thought is the only diversity that really means anything. So ostracism is already at play. Ostracism is already occurring. The question is, do we let bad people use it, or do we also let good people use it? And this is sort of the argument around cancel culture, which is, I get it. The left wants to hold on to the power called cancel culture. I get it. Of course. I mean, why would I want my enemy to get a soft weapon that I alone get to wield? Right? So, of course, they want to say, well, you're a hypocrite if you punch back, so to speak. Like if you fight back and peacefully and reasonably and all lawfully and all of that. But if you push back, let's say push back is better. So I've been pushing you. If you push back, you're a hypocrite because you said you were against people pushing. And it's like, well, I said I was against people pushing. I never said I was against people pushing back. Right? And people make this mistake. They say, Steph, you're a pacifist. I'm like, no. Self-defense is perfectly valid. And in fact, it's kind of morally required especially if you have a family and kids, like you owe them self-defense so that you're protected. So ostracism is already at play in society. And anybody who's been at some dinner party or family gathering and who has voiced an opinion that the lefties in your family don't like, I mean, they'll mess you up for it. They'll attack you. They'll ostracize you. They'll roll their eyes. They'll put you down. So ostracism is already at play. The question is, if there's ostracism only on one side, then the other side is going to lose because it's the last peaceful thing. We want reason, we want debate, we want facts and evidence. If that fails, ostracism is the last peaceful stop before violence, because ostracism says to people, there are consequences for you being immoral. There are consequences for you believing false things that are really destructive to society. And if you had a member of your family, a cousin or whatever, and he was a doctor, and he kept prescribing the wrong medicines, and he kept getting people addicted for fun and profit to various benzodiazepines or opioids or something like that, I mean, that would be bad. And you wouldn't want to hang out and break bread with somebody who was committed to the destruction of his patients and the harm of his patients. Well, false, bad political ideas, calling people Nazis and fascists and white supremacists. I mean, this is all incredibly dangerous and ugly stuff. And why would you want to be with people who are harming society through their lies? and you're just turning over the last peaceful weapon to those who are hell-bent on, well, I mean, gosh, the end goal of the left ultimately is self-destruction, but there's a lot of harm along the way for that. So I don't know. I don't know how it plays out. And you don't judge morals by their consequences, right? You don't sit there and say, well, I mean, who is going to pick the fruit and the vegetables if we don't have slaves? I mean, you just have to say, well, slavery is wrong. And, you know, we generally assume that moral consistency is going to lead to positive outcomes, though not for everyone. I mean, there were some slaves who, didn't know what to do themselves under a state of freedom. Still, slavery had to be ended. There were slave owners and slave catchers who were out of a job, slave auctioneers. Too bad. In general, for society as a whole, things tend to be better for individuals. Maybe there's harm, but we still have to do the right thing anyway. So if people are lying and aggressive, and I'm not talking about criticism, because there's this whole thing all I did was criticize Charlie Kirk. It's like, no, you didn't, you liar. Not you, obviously, right? But no, of course you didn't. You danced and you celebrated somebody being gunned down in front of their family. You thought it was great. You had that gleam that I talked about last Wednesday, that gleam in the eye. You had that sadistic happiness that somebody was murdered for their opinions, debates, and arguments. That's not the same as, well, I thought Charlie Kirk was wrong about circumcision. Nobody's going to cancel you for that. But if you cheer the slaughter of a noble man, and nobody's even forcing your employer to fire you, they're just telling your employer what you did. That's free speech too, man. Contacting your employer with what you openly posted, voluntarily posted. Nobody forced you to do it. You voluntarily posted. Nobody's going into your phone and stealing private videos, right? You post it publicly. That's free speech too. And if we only let the bad guys have the last soft pushback before violence, we will get violence. So I think it's the most peaceful thing we can do. What happens as a result of that? Hopefully people say, gee, this person's really passionate about this. Maybe I should listen to them. Maybe they don't, but you shouldn't break bread with evildoers.
Great, very direct to the point. I don't have much else to ask. Maybe ask you, are you hopeful of the future regarding to this?
Yeah, I don't really do hope. I try and do integrity, and I'm aiming to have as good a conscience as I can, no matter what. No matter what. I've been saying for the last couple of months, people have been asking me, especially because I'm back on X, I've been saying for the last couple of months, my aim is to do maximum philosophy, which is to do as much philosophy as humanly possible right before they kill you, then pull back a bit. And of course, we can see recently that certainly can happen. So I don't really do hope. I do integrity and honesty, maximum philosophy, maximum engagement, maximum, hopefully some charm and positivity in what it is that I do that makes it a little easier to listen to some harsh truths. I don't really do hope. I do integrity, and whatever will happen, will happen. Hope is to try and have a thought about something beyond your control. And if I can control it, I'll try and do the best I can with it. And if I can't control it, and which is the future, then I tend to not have an opinion about it, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Stefan. I hope you and your family are doing well.
Thank you. We are, and I appreciate that. All right. Sorry, there's somebody who has been waiting for a while, who's from the UK. My gosh, it must be the middle of the night. So, auf wir. I don't think that's not Austrian for Adolf, is it? I think. Wait, did I click you in? I don't know what's going on there, man. Are you there? Can you hear? No? All right. King, if you want to take us home, I am happy to hear your thoughts. Unless did we talk? We didn't talk, right? All right. I think we have lost our audience for the night, which is fine. I had a long debate with our good friend, Professor John, who I'm very glad finally had the time to call in, and I did enjoy the conversation. It was a great workout, and I really do appreciate him dropping by. Fiery and enjoyable, and I hope engaging for you guys as well. Very, very important conversations to have, and I certainly do appreciate him calling in, just as I appreciate and love all of you guys for giving me the greatest conversation the world has ever seen. I genuinely, honestly, and deeply believe that outside of the divine. I mean, I am not going to compete with the divine. As far as mortals go, I think we're doing pretty well. So don't forget to subscribe on X, top right. Just click on the subscribe thing and we'll get yourself cooking from there. If you don't want to do X, you can go to freedomain.com/donate, a wide variety of options. And I will see you Friday night, and we will do a donor-only live stream Sundays, 11 a.m. Lots of love from up here, my friends. Take care. Thank you again. I love you all so much. Have a great night. Bye.